Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the open public budget hearing of the school committee. I call this meeting to order at 6:34. If anybody is interested in speaking, if you could add your name to the list. But this is an opportunity for members of the community to share their questions or comments about the FY27 budget. We'll adhere to the same process that we do for public comment during school committee meetings, which is we will ask people to hold their comments to 3 minutes or less. Unlike school committee meetings, we will have the opportunity at the end, if it's appropriate, for either the superintendent or members of the school committee to answer questions or comment based on any of the comments that people have raised. Also, this is an opportunity for us to get feedback on the budget before we vote on it, and that vote will be happening on May 16th. So we will not be voting tonight. Tonight's just an opportunity for the community to share their feedback. I mean, March 16th, thank you, March 16th. So if anybody would like to speak, if you've written your name down, if you'd like to come up. I will also note that Rob reached out ahead of time and asked if he could have a couple of extra minutes because he's speaking on behalf of the CPAC. So just wanted to preface that.
Hello, everyone. So I have a piece of paper because I'm a Gen Xer, so no phone in front of me. Good evening. My name is Rob Miltz. I'm the Milton CPAC co-chair. I serve along with Joe McCarthy, and I'm here to share CPAC's feedback regarding the FY27 proposed budget. Professionally, I've been involved in public budgeting for over nearly 25 years, and I know budgets are a reflection of priorities and values, but they're more than numbers. They're also moral documents. In his presentation, the interim superintendent identified a number of areas that were off limits to cuts, including elementary school classrooms, art, music, PE, world language, etc. As an early form of the FY27 budget proposal included cuts to 2 BCB positions, CPAC members reached out to you all, and we were pleased that these 2 positions will not be eliminated as part of the FY27 budget. That was good news, so thank you. While not all positions or classroom-facing, special education positions are all critical for grading, support, and the delivery of services. Those adjustments that we saw in the earlier versions of the proposed budget appeared to us to be disproportionate and unequal. We do not see proportionate reductions in other non-legally specialized and separate programs such as French immersion. We need stability year to year staffing in special education. We want to avoid as much staffing whiplash because it is frankly counterproductive. On an annual basis, we have seen that SPED positions are viewed as a budgetary pressure valve. Reduction in SPED positions have been a go-to when budgets are tight. One year, a team chair position is not backfilled. The next year, when caseloads increase, it is back. One year, an assistant director of student services is not backfilled. The next year, it is back when the need for the position has been better understood. This practice is not new to the FY27 budgeting process. We've seen it for a number of years. We believe that such reductions to special education services or year-to-year variability will increase the risk of even further costs to the district. A reduction in special education staff will lead to further out-of-district placements for students. Today and in the near term, some students will be needlessly sent away to expensive private and collaborative schools many miles from their families and their home schools because Milton does not have the staff to do the work. In doing so, we will fail those children. Staffing reductions will be counterproductive with the goal of reducing costs. We as representatives of Milton's special education community will not support the increased risk for children lacking individual gains. And as a result, the district will take on more costs over time. Short-term, short-sighted cost cutting does nothing to prolong these financial pressures. We must do better, and we will ask that you partner with us now and in the future. So thank you, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
It was just Rob. if anyone's online seeking to participate. Sure.
Could you log in as a participant?
I think I would have to be a panelist. Is anybody else in the room while we see if anybody online is interested in anybody else? Public comment?
One person on the call on the phone, so he'll promote them to the screen.
Do they have their hand raised? Oh.
Yes.
Person looking to speak, you have been promoted, you declined, you have been given permission to speak. Please speak.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Hi, thank you. Hi, Suzanne Bridges, 71 Center Lane. I'm a parent of a 12th grade and 11th grade student here at Milton High School. I am speaking tonight to express my strong opposition to the proposed elimination of the nursing department head. While I understand that the district faces difficult financial decisions, removing the leadership position that oversees student health services is short-sighted and poses significant risk to student safety, mental health, legal compliance, and educational outcomes. The school nursing department is the essential backbone of the health safety in our schools. Here are just a few points I wanted to add, as if I had all night, I could speak all night about how important I believe this position is. There are significant safety and legal considerations associated with eliminating this position and assigning lead nurse responsibilities to a nurse who is already accountable for an entire building. This change may increase risk exposure and impact compliance, oversight, and quality of care. The current director is available to answer questions on a medically fragile students in real time. When you are dealing with health and safety, many questions and concerns cannot wait for an email to be returned or a part-time person to be in the office. The current director has the knowledge base to know who is the appropriate candidate to hire and then can provide specific training and support to that candidate to ensure the student safety. The district is responsible for providing this for any student with a complex medical condition. Who will do this and provide as needed daily support when the one-to-one nurse has a concern? Who is available to come to Collycott, for example, if the one-to-one nurse needs support? The current director does last-minute coverages and arranges nurse coverage for the one-to-one students, often after hours and on weekends. Who will be arranging these coverages and ensuring that the nurse covering has been trained and can step in to help this student? Who will be available to cover the one-to-one nurse in an emergency and step in if the lead nurse will be assigned to a building? Who will be able to cover if anything last minute should arise? If we remove this leadership, we leave our staff, school nurses unsupported and increase the liability, of the district. The department head is essential to ensure that nurses are not overwhelmed and that they can focus on direct patient care while having the support required to manage the health needs of our student body. I urge the committee to reconsider this proposal and recognize that investing in nursing leadership is essential for a safe, inclusive, and effective school environment. Thank you for taking the time tonight, and thank you for your commitment to the well-being of our students.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is anyone else online speaking, interested in speaking? Yes.
I do not
Ms.
believe
Bridges,
so.
I think your hand is still raised. If anybody else? Thank you. Is anybody else interested? If so, would you raise your hand? No, thank you.
We can just leave that
Yeah.
open, just ask folks if they, anybody in the audience.
Joanne McCarthy, can I ask you to go check the door for me? Mark's there. He's
See
locked.
if anybody's out
Mark's
there? The
locked
door's
out.
locked. Yep.
Thank you.
A break in between the
They were
doors.
supposed to open at 6:30.
Yeah, I think that we can, so just making sure that nobody else in the audience wants to speak now, I think we can begin whatever discussion, or response.
We don't have to respond. I think it's just there's an opportunity.
Yeah, that people want, and, no, the hearing can adjourn early. The full meeting just cannot
Start till 7.
call to order until 7 PM, which is when it's posted for, so.
We can give it another, I'd like to just give it another minute or two for people online in case they called in early.
Of course, yeah. Yeah, I mean, so while we're waiting to see if anybody else wants to speak, since our last meeting, I have responded to several emails, met with our leadership team, met with our PTO presidents, met with our CDM and MARC partnership groups, and met with a couple of nurses to hear their feedback, and got emails from folks as well. And, you know, we are in a very interesting budget year where we are moving along throughout the fall, where we thought we had a budget rhythm going, where we thought we would be able to roll everybody over and move forward. And then in January, we were asked to reduce the budget. And it feels like a lot of things are out of order. It feels like we're not explaining things as well as we should have to folks. It sounds like, in some feedback we got, that this landed on people pretty hard. And we hear that feedback. We got that feedback directly from families and parents on Monday and Tuesday of this week. We had a thorough review of not just the positions that were added, but we were reviewing every single position in the district in order to try to figure out how we can best realign our resources to make sure the classroom is impacted in a positive way the best we can. So even if there was not going to be a reduction, we were still trying to line up all of our adults, all of our resources towards the classroom. I think it's also important to recognize that our 5 priorities start with, for this year, the classroom tier 1 instruction. We are trying to make sure that every student is in a classroom that has a teacher and other supports that are directly connected to students every single day. Because every single student deserves to be in front of grade level material. And if they need supports for that grade level material, all those supports are pushed in. So we did value the classroom. And I think also at the beginning of the year, when we got together with the school committee and the finance committee, we put a philosophy of our budgeting together, starting with financial sustainability, then tier 1 instruction, our culture and climate, and using data to inform our instruction, ensuring that we were touching every single student in the classroom. That does not make any of these reductions easy. That does not mean that people in these roles do not work hard. And the reason why I would bring up the 75 wasn't to say that I need to look at those and some of those have to go at the expense of nothing else. We looked at the whole district. We brought all of your principals in. We brought our special education director in. We brought our director of DEIB in. They are our leadership team. And we did that as recently as yesterday to try to make sure that we're landing in the right way. So the communication of this, I think, is a little disjointed, and I take responsibility for that. We are responding to a very unique budget year, starting on January 7th. Wish we had these conversations in September where we could get feedback and move it along in a way that people could provide more feedback so we could look at it more holistically, and that the community could understand the budget process more holistically because we may have not had a chance to actually communicate all of that throughout this shortened process. So we are here to talk about and listen. I continue to listen for people's feedback. The nurse position is absolutely one that we continue to get feedback on. It was at our PTO president's meeting. We had one parent that was very concerned about it. And also the PTO parents, quite frankly, were very concerned about what happens next year. They really want to talk about next year. They really want to talk about, is this going to happen every year? And from a budgeting strategy, we're trying to address that. We're trying to address the fact that if we are needing to reduce some positions this year, that we do so thoughtfully, but we also have to take the long game and talk to the town hall and work with our select board members and our warrant committee and our town administrator, Nick Milano, who's very helpful, by the way, in order to think about how can we make sure that our budget has more expense availability than just the 3% that they told us about in January. That's not an acceptable number. So I think we've been saying the same thing for the remainder, since we found out this in January. Let's try to shave down the edge of this reduction for next year. And let's have a real hard conversation with the town about what are we going to do moving forward, so parents don't have to worry every year, so our educators don't have to worry every year about what the staffing levels will be for our children moving forward. So that's kind of the big picture that we're working on. And as your interim superintendent, I'm not working on a long-range plan for you. I'm working on trying to reset the district from a very thoughtful way. So when we hand off this district to a new superintendent, they have some things in place that they can count on to begin to move the district forward for a little longer term. We are a short-term group that we're trying to just reset and move forward. So I can understand that some people might think these are short-sighted. I respect that feedback, and that there has been a back and forth over these past few years that I have not been a part of, that I respectfully will listen to and understand that's where folks are coming from. And I'm here for a short time to facilitate the work for the community. And so I look to the school committee for feedback. I looked for folks in the community for feedback. We listened to initial feedback. We made alterations to the budget. We'll continue to listen from now to Monday and do the same thing. And we'll try to make the best choices we can with the dollars we have. And then we will continue to work with, sometimes disagree with, and argue with members of the other parts of our community related to what that budget should look like moving forward. We believe that those expense numbers should be higher than 3%. We believe that the district would not be served well with anything less than 3 or less. So we're trying to take the long game. We're trying to have those conversations with the town, and it's being received well. There's good dialogue happening now initially, but between now and June, we have a lot of work to do to set up the FY28 process. So we have these conversations in August and September, and not in January and February. So that's our goal from our work this year, and our goal next year. As it relates to 2 specific speakers tonight, we fully understand and heard very loud that some of those reductions that were connected to special education landed really hard and felt disproportional. So that feedback has been heard, and we have responded to it, and we appreciate people advocating on behalf of our students. And also the nurses, still a continuing conversation, whether or not we want more time in front of students or more time in an administrative level, and exactly what does that administrative time need to be in order to effectively support our nurses. So that's something that we're judging. Mark did some nice research. We have districts that he researched where I'd say about 65% of the districts had a nurse director and about 35 had a lead nurse. And the next question after seeing some of that service research is, where is that district nurse located? Are they in a nurse's office? Are they working some building for the majority of the day and working out of there and being available to nurses maybe at the beginning of the day, at the end of the day? Is there still availability for them to work with students directly on a regular day? So all those things we're looking at. We do have an extra roughly $110,000 that we haven't committed to yet. We can always look at other things that were on the list to reduce if we wanted to put back the nurse position. We had some other positions that we had talked about as a leadership team. But there's competing interest for those dollars. We want to make sure that we're fully funded for next year. And some information that we got just last week from the director and the commissioner of Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed, our Title I money has been eliminated for next year. And that's about $130,000 that goes directly to the Tucker School, connected to our additional math interventionalist and some direct tutoring that we provide students. And that's beyond our control. So just now we say, wow, that $110,000 really has some competing interests. Where do we wanna use those dollars? So I think that that's a continued conversation that we would need to have. And if we wanna look at something else in the list to add the nurse director back and maybe reduce something else. If we wanna take more money out of the circuit breaker account, that's certainly a discussion, but we are learning that last night at the select board meeting, the $500,000 we thought were going to the schools is going to an account on the town side for the school committee and the school and the select board to oversee and not into our budget. So that's $500,000 that we thought we would have in our reserve account to be more flexible next year. That will not be there directly for us to access in our own budget. So there's moving parts to this process that we're still exploring. We will vote a bottom line budget on the 16th, the school committee will. There will be room for making shifts and changes throughout the spring because we have bottom line authority to our budget. If we think that something's needed, then we will have to go out and get it. Just in the last 2 weeks, we've posted 2 more paraprofessional roles to support students in district, so they may get supported at a higher level so they don't go out of district. And we posted a 1.0 special educator to support somebody in the district that we want to make sure we're serving at a higher level, again, in order for that student to be serviced in their own school. This is March. Way back in March of 25, no one knew that those expenses were going to come up. That's why we need reserves at least a moderate to healthy level in order to flexibly be able to address the needs of all of our students and things happen during the course of a year. So we're trying to be flexible, we're trying to think forward, we're trying not to be short-sighted, we're trying to actually set the district up for success after next year. I'm available to be part of 2 budgets for the district, and my goal is to try to, again, reset it in a way that makes sense for our staff and our students, most importantly, and for someone to come in and be able to see that the budget has a balance sheet that makes sense, that feels comfortable to the incoming superintendent, and that we have a district ready to go for their longer view of what the work should be in the town of Milton. So I appreciate folks being here. I appreciate the emails that I've received. I appreciate the dialogue that I've had with folks in small groups and in one-to-one settings. And we'll continue to listen and we'll continue to improve. But we do have to vote a budget. But that does not preclude us from actually getting that budget in place and getting it voted next week or a town meeting in May, that things might arise that we need to shift the resources towards things that we need to do for children. And that includes the flexibility of the nurse position. That includes flexibility of adding things that we know we need to do for children at any point in the year. And on March 11th, we're doing it right now for a budget that was voted last March. So just to kind of give you the sense of the need and the flexibility that we need to have in order to meet the needs of about 4,200 students.
Give one last opportunity if anybody is online and had a question, if you want to raise your hand. If you joined the later, if you would like to come forward and speak. A few more minutes.
Any of the people who've arrived who wanted to speak?
No pressure. All right. Seeing as nobody else is raising their hand and there's nobody online, I think we can close the budget forum. Do we need a motion to close the forum?
Yeah.
Yes. Could I take a motion to close the budget forum?
So moved.
Second? Second. All in favor? Budget forum is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. We'll open the regular school committee meeting in 2 minutes. Welcome, everyone, to the March 11th meeting of the Milton School Committee. If we could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty Okay, so we would just have everybody take a look at the agenda and see if there were any changes. Anybody's committee did not meet. Everything looks good. Okay, great. So move forward with that agenda. So we like to start every meeting of the Milton School Committee with public comment. We, in accordance with school committee policy, we welcome members of the community to share their perspectives with us during public comment. We have set aside up to 15 minutes for this part of the meeting, and individuals may speak for up to 3 minutes each. While the school committee does not respond directly to public comment, there may be opportunities for members to address issues that are raised over the course of the meeting when relevant topics are on our agenda. We strive to engage in respectful discourse during our meetings and ask the public comment speakers keep that in mind. Speakers should introduce themselves for the record. Is there anyone here for public comment tonight? Is there anyone online who wishes to speak?
No hands raised.
Great, seeing no hands raised and nobody here, we will move on to the superintendent's report.
So we have two of our incredible students here from Milton High who are our representatives to the school committee. They're also like rock stars in the community because they are on the girls hockey team that is in the championship on Sunday at the Boston Garden. I would like to introduce Samantha Talbert and Taylor Scully to come up to the table, please. Samantha is a sophomore serving in her first year as a representative to the school committee. She plays field hockey, lacrosse at Milton High, and is involved in Morgan's Message, Best Buddies Sunrise Club. Outside of school, she runs a nonprofit organization called Smiles Across Milton, which organizes social events for adults with special needs. That's incredible. Thank you for that, Samantha. Taylor is a freshman serving her first year on the student government. She played for the field hockey team this fall and was part of the winning girls hockey team as well, going to the Boston Garden on Sunday at 9 a.m. This Sunday, this weekend, and is looking forward to playing softball in the spring. In her free time, she enjoys spending time outdoors and helping out around her community. So Samantha and Taylor, thank you. This is your first time at the table, so this is great stuff. We have one of your reps behind you that's a senior, so he's already been here with us before, but please update us on what's going on at Milton High, and we can't wait to hear.
So the updates we have the girls hockey team is going to the Garden on Sunday for the finals. This month is our school's music month, and we have a lot of concerts happening. There are some this week and next week. And the theater, MHS Theater, has made it to semifinals.
Along with the robotics team, they're like thriving. They're attending the state championships in April after placing first in their qualifier. Spring sports tryouts start Monday, so everything's getting back into full swing after winter. Please see Ms. Conagy to get cleared. And course selections are due at the end of this week on Friday. Most of the school counselors went into the history classes last week and explained the process to the students.
That's great. Tell me, how did that go? Tell me about your course selection process. So the guidance counselors came into your social studies class so they could make sure they hit every student. And what did they talk about?
They just talked about like classes next year, like what the school offers and like the intensity of those classes, and talked about like the recommendation process of how your teachers recommend you for certain classes and how you sign up for those classes.
Excellent. So did you guys already pick your classes for next year?
I'm not done with mine yet.
Yeah, I haven't fully decided, but I'll do it soon.
And is that electronic, so you would go on to?
It's on Power School.
It's on Power
where
School,
we have
so you
all
have
our
to, you have to
grades.
click everything in so you can click your courses. Very good. We met with Ms. Bellevue last week to kind of get the scoop on that, so we wanted to make sure it was all going well. And we have our senior in the back who didn't have to pick any classes because he's gonna be somewhere else next year. The group have any questions for our freshman and sophomore?
Just very impressed. Congratulations on hockey.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank
Good
you.
luck. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. You already won. Great. Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
All right, I'll go on with the rest of my report. As Taylor and Samantha said, this is March. March is Music in Our Schools Month. This is the biggest month of the year for our music folks. The concerts began last night with a grade 5 through 12 string concerts. We also have district-wide chorus concerts on Monday and Tuesday of next week, and a band concert on March 24th. Please make sure you check the district calendar. This is really good stuff, and our students work very hard. We have the Tucker Art Show on March 12th. I talked to the art teacher today. She's very excited about having folks in, so please go by the Tucker Art Show on March 12th from 6 to 7:30. March 18th is our grade 1 information night that we have every year. That's in person in the high school auditorium. If you are a kindergarten family and or younger, and you want to find out how first grade works, because we do have a choice program in Milton. We have French immersion in our project Lead the Way, and that information will be shared with folks. So if you're interested in that, please come at 6:30. Future Problem Solvers, which is one of our grade 4 and grade 5 specialized programs. We're happy to say that Dr. Redden, our Cunningham principal, reported that 2 Cunningham students qualified to compete in the Mass State Championships for future problem solving. That will take place on Saturday, March 28th at Clark University. The third team was also very talented and competed well, but did not qualify. At the Glover School last night, they had their basketball championship. And also last Thursday night, the Tucker had their basketball championship, which is a huge night. People in the crowd were there. It was decided on a last-minute shot with 2 seconds left to win the game. It was pretty impressive. The Glover will play the Tucker next Thursday night in a final game. These are growing programs at both the Glover and the Tucker, and we hope to bring it to the Cunningham and Collie Park in future years as well. Glover also is having their bingo night through their DEIB group, and also they have their Glover musical, We Are Monsters, that happened this week and will happen over the weekend. Milton High winter season has come to an end. Indoor track nationals at New Balance, we have students Annalise Aguilar, Danae Sweeney, Grace McDonough, Sasha Beasy, Grace McDonough, Kate Bridges, Ella Turner, Noah Tran, Miles Fergus, Brody Taylor, and Bibi Beto are all competing at New Balance, so congratulations to them. Our dance team, who actually performed at the halftime of the boys tournament game last week, is competing at the state championships at Framingham State this Saturday at 2:30. As we mentioned, our girls ice hockey team will be playing at the Boston Garden against King Philip at 9 a.m. on Sunday, and spring sports for all of our high school athletes starts on Monday. So please take this week to sign your children up and make sure that they have all their documents in this week so they can participate on Monday, March 16th. And that is my update.
Excellent, thank you. Next, we have the Early Literacy Initiative update.
So I'm going to introduce Kat, and then I'm going to ask Carla to as well, because Carla works directly with Kat Young, formerly Kat DeRoche.
Used to it.
This is meeting 2 of 2. Ms. Kat DeRoche was here with us in her role as K-8 Literacy Director for the Milton Public Schools to talk about the work that her and her team were doing related to the early literacy work. The school committee listened very closely to the needs and desires of the parents over the last year and a half about wanting more effective approach to literacy, especially at our elementary grades. Money was set aside last year during the month of May and June for this year's budget in order for us to have that work explored and purchased. So we do have money in the budget for this. And I think a lot of our families are really excited to know that the school committee and the school administration prior to my arrival have followed through on this very important work. And we can't wait to find out what the committee did. And Carla, you'll work with Kat.
Yeah, so it's hard to quantify the number of hours that it takes to really think through carefully curriculum decisions. And Kat really put together a roadmap that involved a lot of feedback and visitation. She's going to tell you everything in her presentation, but I think it's really important to recognize the diligence and the careful, thoughtful approach to making sure that what we bring our children with literacy is the best fit for our children in Milton. And the team was extremely dedicated and just did a lot of work to really choose something that was a good fit for our students. And I was able to sit in on a session that Kat did in our PD day, and the teachers were literally like, they're so excited about this curriculum, and that's just gonna trickle down to our students because they're thrilled with the choice. They're excited to dig in, and it just says a lot about Kat and the work of the team to find something that is really gonna be powerful for our students. So Kat, take it away.
Carla and John. So thanks for having me. As John and Carla were talking, I was kind of looking around at this group and just you've all been part of this journey in various ways. So just thank you for getting us here because it really has been a really great example of teamwork and all that that means. So I'm very happy to be here. We're sort of, in the many waves of change. We're sort of at the top of a wave at the moment, and we'll hit some other, valleys and peaks. But it feels good to be here. So this is an update, and I've included some reminder slides that I won't spend too much time on, but I wanted to kind of ground it, sort of pick up where we left off in October, and then bring you up to date on the work that's been done. So we'll start with the first slide. So so I just want to start by recognizing this outstanding team that, as Carla was saying, really has been committed and continues to be committed to the really important work of being thoughtful and reflective, as well as representative on behalf of their colleagues and their students, and just the amount of expertise that has been in the room every step of the way. So thank you so much to all of these individuals for what you've done and what you will continue to do, because there's a lot of excitement. While a big chunk of our work is done, we now are picking up another large chunk of it to implement and support. So we're kind of just beginning in some ways, but thank you to all of these people. And so just to remind us where we are in this process, we are now in the fourth step, where I'm going to start us is on looking at the materials. When I came before, we were just preparing to really dig into the what of this curriculum work. And so to remind us all, we had 6 DESE approved high quality instructional materials. We went with that list. We then pared it down to 4 after looking at, so we can go to the next slide. And as a reminder, high quality instructional materials are DESE approved materials that are complete curricular resources, including all the domains of literacy and English language arts. And so those were the only publishers we looked at. We sent a staff survey ahead of looking at those materials, and we had 93 respondents, which is a very high response rate. And that represented all types of grades, classroom teachers, specialists, special educators, some instructional assistants. So it was a really good cross-section of our staff. And we wanted to know really, what are your priorities? What do you see as necessary for our next steps? And what will you anticipate the biggest supports that will be needed to make it successful for you? And so in December, we used the Pierce cafeteria and did sort of like a publisher fair without publisher representatives, but we set up each curriculum and we took, I think it was something like a 3-hour meeting, and we had our checklist of key elements we were looking for, had time to debrief, and then followed up 2 weeks later with, because we needed more time. Again, this committee was very thorough and committed to quality and reliable work. And so from there, we reviewed the results of those materials and narrowed it down to 2 that we would in a more in-depth way look and observe as our finalists. And so we landed on HMH's Into Reading, and that should be Houghton Mifflin Wonders. I apologize, that's an error on my part. And what we did with these 2 was we observed, so we went to Hanover and Hingham, who Hanover implements Wonders and Hingham uses Into Reading. We did a site visit. So we took the entire committee went and saw both of these materials being used in real time. And then the day after that site visit, that was structured with, look-fors and conversation and interviews with teachers and administrators. The next day, we lined it up to coincide with professional development half days. So the next day, publishers came in and presented to the committee where we could ask questions, hear from them. and I apologize to any publishers that are watching or listen to this, but it was very intentional to wait until the end to bring in the sales pitch. If you've ever been a part of where you go and buy a car, you know that it's very shiny and happy and everything's perfect. And we really wanted to contextualize it and root it in real life. So we looked at the stuff, we saw it being used, and then we got sort of the golden presentation. And that really did seem to work well. Following each presentation, the rubric that was established in September was used and completed by the committee. And then those results were how we came to our recommendations. And so just before February break, the committee was unanimous in their recommendation for interreading from HMH. And again, I'll contextualize this. There is no perfect anything, and in particular, no perfect curricular resource, but this was the one that felt the most, the one that we felt we could implement the most successfully among our colleagues and for our students, and that provided the most opportunities to differentiate and expose students to grade level material with scaffolds and extensions. And so just at a high level, this resource is being recommended based on Milton's ability to focus on the essential staff provided focus areas, which is reading comprehension and writing. It allows us to retain UFly, although in just when we compare it, and the company does have a crosswalk document to both, they are very, very, very similar. The slides provided are almost mimic the UFly slides, so there are some teachers that would like to try this resource in the fall, which is great. But we do have UFly for those that would care to retain it. The feedback was that it provides clear assessment expectations for all of the domains, and we're going to work this summer with the team to tie them to report cards so that we're very clear about what we're using across the board to assess students' ability to master and demonstrate mastery of their grade level standards. And then another reason was the committee felt that there was real clear ways in which we can work with grade alike colleagues to calibrate during the implementation, that this will require less calibration than other resources. So now comes the important work of preparing to equip teachers with the information they need and the resources they need to do this well, and with clear expectations of what supports are available and what is expected as we go through. And so I've been working with Katie and Carla and John about meeting regarding budget, making sure we're staying true to our plan for that, and also expediting the procurement of teacher materials before the end of the year. So we want teachers to leave for the summer having already seen what it looks like, the physical materials. So as Carla said, we were able to reach over 80 of our Unit A staff members last week during PD to show some of the background and the next steps, but really the majority of time was for them to use the demo accounts online and look at the physical materials. And there was a real positive energy, not to be too qualitative, but lots of positive, lots of smiles, lots of when are we going to be able to do this, or this is great, you know, talking with teachers with their colleagues about what this could look like. So I felt like that sort of soft launch went really well. Again, I'm not so naive to think it's going to be rainbows and sunshine every day going through, but it really couldn't have gone better. And I just want to publicly also say our staff is amazing and so flexible, and you know, they're coming at it really positively. It was palpable in the room, so thank you to everyone. And now the work that I'm working with Carla specifically on is to set implementation goals and timelines around what are the teams that we need in order to have touch points to every grade at every school. How can I then go and meet with that team? There's a lot of committee members that want to stay in that capacity to help, you know, be those point people at their schools, which is awesome. And so there'll be more to come on that. You know, what are we going to do this summer to make sure that we're offering teachers time to spend with the materials, and creating some of those Milton specific documents, the pacing, you know, what are going to be our must-dos in year one? What are the things that we can overlap with science and social studies? Are there, ways that we can maximize teacher prep time to help with those types of day-to-day things? All right, so there are a couple pictures in the next slides of the wonderful staff members that came. So they worked in grade level teams to really look at the resources across schools, just super engaged and positive. So that was a bright spot for sure. In April and May, I'll be visiting all faculty. I'll go to each school to their faculty meeting, all four, to just once again serve as a touch point, sent out a video kind of going over how they can access things in the meantime. And then I hope to share what our training and opportunities for engagement will be both in the summer and in the fall. I will solicit for a team of interested staff to work together over the summer to, again, just more locally look at what are the things we can do, what are the things we need to pay attention to, the feedback loop of how we get, how's it going, what do you need, what's tricky, what's easy. I covered those two. And the budgetary impact is as was said, has already been set aside. I'm working with the company to get a final, all the nuts and bolts of that. And we are planning to engage in a 5-year contract. Again, not to say we won't reflect and dig into practices and data and all that. But I think, as I said, it's highly unlikely we'll go through this type of a process before 5 years. So it'll be, it's the most cost effective as well to do that.
So I would like to say, and I left this out at the beginning, Kat made the presentation to Collar and I and Katie, and we approve of the selection. We support the work of the district-wide group of folks that supported that work. I'm really thankful that there was 2 different phases of this. I'm looking back at the review process slide. You came to us with the big why back in the fall and talked about the rubric being a real guiding document that you would use. Thank you for demonstrating that you actually stuck to the why and also used the rubric in order to inform your selection. I really want to emphasize again that these are high quality materials that are DESE approved, so they've already been through a level of scrutiny for high quality materials. And in my work with other superintendents, people are still trying to get into that work as we speak right now to do what we're doing. We're implementing next year. They're still trying to get into the phase of looking into these materials and getting support from DESE. The materials are incredible, so thank you for all that work. The preparation that we'll do between now, the summer, and then throughout the fall in basically the whole school year, in order to provide intermittent professional development that you and Collar are working on and how we can implement that. And a big thank you to Katie for having the insight to make sure that the funds were set aside in FY26. We created a textbook line in our budget that can actually support some of this in FY27 that's still there, despite some of our budget concerns, because this is an important thing that the community said that they wanted the school community to accomplish. It's nice to be able to come in at the end of it, and I know that there's a lot of work that went into this. And I can't say out loud how thankful I am to all the educators across the district. Every single school was represented. District-wide administration was represented. Our special education department and our DEIB directors and cabinet members were represented. Regular education, special education, teachers, every grade level. So the wide work, the wide audience of professionals. And I'm writing down on my notes, we need to find a stipend for these folks to help the work next year, because they put in all this time. These are invested educators using a lot of their own time in order to make the selection process work with Kat. So thank you to all of those. So the budgeting pieces, I think we went over with Katie, and the 5-year makes the most sense from a fiscal perspective. And I didn't know if we wanted to stop there. Does anybody have any questions? Actually, you can finish the implementation as well. I thought.
Yeah, that's fine. No, and I think some of these are redundant. My apologies. I was just kind of continue talking. But I just think this last one is just another reiteration that it's going to be a continuous feedback loop where we're going to train and give time to collaborate, implement, regroup, kind of get that feedback loop again. How's it going? Let's look at the data. Are we know, what's working with the tools? What do we need more assistance on? And then, kind of continue that loop. And to John's point, in January of this year, legislation was passed and signed that this is required for K-3. It makes sense with our structure that we do K-5. I think that's important. But that this is something that, as we all know, for a few years now, has been a priority for the state. And I'm happy for a few reasons it took this long. I think the versions that have come out since this initial groundswell in 2021 have been more refined and are even better than we would have had, say, when we first started this conversation. So silver lining it again, but I think that is something important that we found during this round of things. I just can't say thank you enough for all your support, because it feels good to be able to say we're doing it. So.
Good people. Thank you so
If I
much.
can add one more thing, I think that I haven't been here in Milton Public Schools, so I haven't seen the processes of selecting materials, but I would say that when we think about systems and we think about processes and procedures, this one is gold standard, and I'm really proud of the work that you've done, Kat. And I think that we should continue with this model going forward, because I think it really is a very fruitful exercise that was done with fidelity and integrity and real care. So thank you.
I actually feel great about the process too.
Yeah,
We
it's
would
awesome.
have, we could have arrived at this conclusion by just like sort of picking, but it just feels really good. I feel like we did a lot of good learning and a lot of good conversations. So thanks.
So thank you.
Questions?
So from a budgetary perspective, Katie is now gonna negotiate with the publisher,
Yes.
3-year versus a 5-year. The 3-year option is over $100,000 a year, but the 5-year, it goes under $100,000 a year. So Katie will buy that new car and ask for a little bit more, and work the company a little bit, and so thank you also for that work that you behind the scenes as well.
Not a question so much, but just I thank you for the presentation, all the work that has gone into it. And I just want to congratulate you for reaching this point, and your whole committee. And it's really exciting, and I think this is a great example of like what we can achieve when we do work together and stay focused. And it requires, it is like all facets of the system have to kind of be aligned in order to make a change this meaningful. And it has taken years to get to this point. So I think now I want to underscore your comment, Carla, about if we are able to have developed a gold standard or a model for curriculum review, and we've accomplished the essential piece of building resources for ongoing curriculum investment into our budget, then we just really have to commit to this as like part, like John, you've helped us think about an annual process of analyzing the budget to make adjustments, realignments within to address the pressing needs. Like this just needs to be a muscle that is sort of like built into the annual cycle, and not, to your point, Kat, like obviously it won't be for it will focus on different subject areas and grade levels like as needed at different points, but it's just refreshing to feel like we've hit a point where we could learn from everything that's been accomplished in order to apply that more broadly going forward. And also to just, I mean, as a school committee member, one of the I would say one of the themes of feedback and sort of questions that I hear from the community is sort of this idea of consistency across schools. And we all, I mean, former teacher, it's a delicate balance between sort of autonomy for the teacher, making sure that they're able to personalize it, to stay really right there with their own students' pacing and needs, while also staying, you know, on pace. So I just hearing from the community how much, like, I think we are interested in ensuring that consistency across the 4 elementary schools, and recognizing how hard our educators are working all the time. I think anytime you have a new curriculum implementation, it's an opportunity because, like, everybody is coming onto a new same page. And so I'm really hopeful that it could potentially help, you know, bring back some of the consistency that may have gotten lost over time, which is natural when you're like many years into a frankly inadequate curriculum and people have to supplement like however they need to do that. So our educators have really been like adapting in very creative ways, and now they have this opportunity to kind of start fresh with a new high bar. So I'm so appreciative of this, and you know, honestly, like looking back over years of serving on this committee, like in terms of an arc of like a success story, I feel like I'm happy I'm here next year to see the implementation and like watch it come full circle. But it will have been a full 2-term circle. So,
But it's true.
I just appreciate all the work that is going into it still. But the rigor of the process is awesome. Like, and I'm glad you can present it with such clarity, because for our community to understand that this is the standard that's being implemented here, you know, it really matters, because like we had work that needed to be done and it's in the process of being done, which is awesome. Thank you.
Well, and thank you all for eye on the prize on this one. There's a lot of reasons you can get distracted and say, oh, we have too much going on this year, you know. But yeah.
Those pressures are being exerted on us like right now
Exactly.
by many members of our community, that, you know, it is our responsibility to stay focused on
hard,
like
though.
short, medium, and long term where we need our students to be. And it's exciting that this comes into, you know, first grade information night is coming. Like, it's very exciting for families to know this is impacting them right
I know,
away.
I was like, I have to update those slides. I was waiting until we had the recommendation.
Meeting is on Monday.
It just reminded me.
It's very timely, so.
So Kat, I do have a question. So you mentioned that there are slides that come with the curriculum that the teacher can use. I assume there will be also books that come with the curriculum.
yes.
Physical books.
Yes,
Yeah.
lots of books.
And I also assume that there will be student platform that the kids can go on to learn things on their own or explore different areas of interest.
Yeah, so, and I think your question is, what's the balance maybe between those?
Yeah.
And that was definitely a consideration that the team discussed from start to finish. You know, we want students, and we have this conversation from K to 8, is we want students to be able to navigate the platform or have the amount of resources that digital platforms bring, and they get updated regularly, so they're more sort of synchronous with what you're doing. And we need students to be able to physically hold a book and have that experience as well, because as we know from neuroscience, that is a whole different learning experience. And that was one of the reasons, that balance between the two, and having the accessibility of sets of small group reading books as well as whole class. One of the major things, and this is getting kind of granular as well, but the anthology for students is a consumable so that they can take notes while they're reading. You know, the whole story is there, but then there might be a graphic organizer to support the response to writing. There are materials for students that might need more scaffolds so that they can be successful in getting grade level material, and then others where it will extend them beyond, which is more on the digital, but it is a good balance of both, which was exciting to the community.
And how can parents access the progress of the students?
Yeah, it's a good question. To my knowledge, there isn't an online platform for you to log in and see sort of like all the assessments and things. But what it does do well is there is a family like a module by module communication that can go out to families. And teachers have already started thinking about like, what are the ways in which we can use these online assessments? Is there something we could send home that will communicate a summary of the standards that are covered so that they know whether, you know, where their student is in relation to those standards, which I think it will be an important piece of that communication of where students are in relation to grade level expectations.
To tag on to part of that conversation is, we had that conversation about budget and whether we could do the consumable or not, because there was a price to the consumable and then there's an annual price to that. And I've been getting a lot of feedback that some families are excited that students have some computer screen time, but they also want them to hold a book, they want them to
Yeah.
write on a piece of paper. And we could have gotten the version where we had to make copies for that and the students would have had to have like a stapled packet. And our children deserve more than that. They deserve the full consumable workbook. That's the anthology that is theirs to hold, to write in, to look back to read, hold, write. And we decided to actually go to the higher option and continue to fund that annually. We do that for our math workbooks at the elementary level as well. We see them in the classrooms being used. The students go backwards and see how they figured something out, and then they go back and they start to do a problem. I just really think it scaffolds to learning. It helps students, you know, in different modalities of learning, and it's going to be money well spent on behalf of the town. So, and for all that, I just got an email the other day. You know, we're on screens too much, and I agree. I think we really need to monitor that. We really need to see students reading books, writing with pens and paper, and using digital and balancing that out a little bit. So this will include all of that.
I just want to say, this has been a long journey.
I know.
I know Lizzie touched on this a bit, but I think like I really appreciate everyone at this table for supporting, wanting to push this and kind of prioritizing it last year despite all the other challenges that we had, because we're so excited to be here today and hear this. And Katie, thank you for like working that into the budget and making sure that we can kind of look at this every year and see what needs to be updated. And you know, I think because this took so long, I hope going forward we can kind of like look at things quicker and if things needed to be updated, and please, you know, please bring it to our attention so we can continue to support, because we don't want anyone to feel like they have to supplement too much where there's inconsistencies between schools. So however we can support, because if it's an urgency, if it's urgency for you, it's an urgency for us. So we want to make sure that, you know, we're aware. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And to get to that point, and I say this to Katie all the time, like we can review curriculum without adopting new curriculum. You can review every year. You know, it doesn't need to be this robust, but you know, we should be doing that and maybe a little more formally. And to Carla's point, replicating this on a B level. And then every 7 years, maybe doing something more robust. But
Yes.
that's exactly right. I think when we get into a cycle of review, it will be more natural, and those things will come up naturally rather than in this big way. Thank you.
Just a couple, I totally agree with what most everybody had said. So like so much for
Sure.
I just a couple things I really agree with the point on the workbook, just like more and more research around trying to get kids off of screens. And also I think the costs associated with copying, not to mention links for teachers and copy jams and all those things that we know is the worst. So I think the cost difference is likely more than made up for. So if we like that decision, I think that's a teacher facing decision. Appreciate that. I'm really excited we can maintain UFly. I think the stuff I see coming home related to that is some of the highest quality kind of work I'm seeing kind of from my kids. And so really like that in terms of this research alignment and how that's helping. So love that. Love that the focus is so much on writing too. We know from those test scores that that's a big area for growth. And so that's awesome. Two questions I had is, I think you talked about it a bit in your slides, but just a bit more on like the avenues for ongoing professional development. Obviously, this is like a big, nice step. And as you mentioned, there's a lot, all the work really starts now of rolling it out, teaching, implementing with fidelity. And so like, you know, a concern with schedule next year is we're losing some half days, so those touch points through the years, that's the trade-off, kind of giving those up. So yeah, just what do you see as like the avenues for maintaining those contents?
Great question. Met with Carla today, we went over the vehicles for professional.
Whiteboard and everything.
It's great. Yeah, we have a whole thing. I think while the half days do present a challenge in terms of the time, the ways in which, and I'll summarize, these are my words, we didn't really say this, but I think what it does provide an opportunity, again, not to silver line it too much, but the opportunity now is present to do more in the moment, like in school PD, where we use teacher teams as a structure to have a touch point to act like to classrooms rather than like a half day where you might take everybody out of their building and be in a meeting, in a training, and now we're bringing it to you. So it'll be more of an instructional leadership team structure where I might meet with those representatives on a monthly basis at each building, and then they'll go out to their teams and I'll be able to push in and kind of see what's going on. Also part of the professional development that we'll engage with the publishers, they do a virtual coaching sessions where teams can sign up for, if they have a common planning at a grade level, they can sign up for a time and have face-to-face with somebody from the company, and that could be something that we leverage. We're in the early stages of planning this, but by the spring or mid-springtime, I'll have a calendar of the month and then sort of the bucket of time, what each will look like so that teachers know before they leave. Okay, I'm gonna have a half day or a full day in August with the publisher and then with Kat, and then I'll have my September check-in meeting with the kindergarten teachers, and then I'll have, maybe Kat will come to my ILT meeting. So there's going to be checkpoints built in, which in a lot of ways feels more responsive to real time what's happening in classrooms. And we're going to reflect on it. If we find in October that, okay, this, we're not hitting the needs of, I don't know what it could be, but we're not hitting the needs of this group of teachers or students, we'll have to recalibrate. So I think what is exciting about this is we're gonna have a clear plan by May or June, and that I feel really strong that the central office leadership team is committed to pivoting if that happens. And so I think that's where we are now, but it's pretty preliminary, I'd say.
Yep, we kind of did a little mapping today, and we may need to use some release time for teachers, and have some subs in, and we'll think that through and make sure that we hit what we need, and also pivot. And we will, Kat and I will check in, regularly as we do, just how are things going, what do we need, what do the teams need, and so we'll give them a kind of a roadmap, but then know that it can be adjusted.
I think the danger comes when this is true of any organization or group of people, is when there's no clarity around what's next, and you're just sort of, you fill in the blanks, and it's often not great, or it's different from your colleague or whatever it is. So it'll be heading in the same direction.
Only other question I had was the interim assessments within the curriculum.
Yep.
Those, is gonna take the place of iReady? No, okay, so we're kind of doing both of those.
Yeah, so Dibbles, our screener, will remain the same. That is the gold standard for K to 3. And so that will be our screener still. And then our summary assessments, summative assessments will be for each module. And then teachers will have probably more than they could ever need, lots of formative or domain-specific assessments that are all part of the program as well. And so we'll determine with that team between now and the summertime, probably into the summer, what are we going to identify as consistent district-wide assessments, which off the top of my head, it would be unit assessments and, probably some sort of summative assessment based on standards. And then what are the ones we'll say are available but not required. So you might do like a vocab assessment every now and then, but that's not going to be one that we tell everybody to do. It'll be embedded into their unit. So we're going to make good use of that.
Yeah. I'm sure you're thinking of this, but just I think having from our lens, just the avenue of seeing how progress is going over the course of the year, right, through those interim assessments and how that is correlated in whatever ways towards kind of what we student performance on end of course kind of MCAS testing, that type of stuff I think is really helpful to understand. I think the last thing is less a comment, but just more related to kind of the, I guess maybe budget, financial resources, things like that. I know you had advocated when we were doing the level service budget, we added additional professional development kind of funding for a lot of this, right, to help carry that forward, which is going to be hugely important to supporting that work. I think we talked about a bit with the cuts. We didn't cut all of that, but cutting that back some. That's a piece where, with the additional flexibility we have right now, with that, you mentioned about $100,000. Just from my perspective, just thinking or asking all to say, like, is that a piece we can put back in? Is there something else, or like, are we robustly supporting that enough? Because especially year one of that implementation, like, you can't have enough time, as y'all know, like, you just can't have enough, and so. But really, obviously, look to y'all on like what y'all think is necessary from that. That'd be a thing I would recommend we just make sure we're thinking about.
Having seen the whiteboard that Kat and Carla worked on, our goal
yeah.
is for every educator, is related to this work specifically, but in general, to leave the year with, in Kat's work, seeing the material, holding material, knowing what it looks like, purchasing things that they can look at, and then knowing what their PD schedule is gonna be for the year. And again, if that's not working, we can pivot. If this is like not enough time and we need to add to it, but we'll have the dates in the vehicles. Like, we look at PD in a way, and Kyle can speak better to this. When you want something done that's embedded in full, then you have a whole day. So we're bringing people in August, and we gave the whole day, part of the whole day last week to this. But then some other PD is better to be done in the classroom, in the building, which Kat is talking about. So we'll build that out, and Carla and Kat will build that out. So when teachers leave, they'll know, oh, October 3rd, November 8th, January 12th, I'm gonna have a half day, I'm gonna have and we'll provide the support for all that. So we'll actually have to cost that out now, to your point, and make sure the money that's in that account that Katie put aside for us is enough, and if we need to move anything around to support it, we will. And part of this budget will be paid for in FY26, and some of it will be paid for in FY27 as well. And we know we have the funds for that, they're already in there and they can cover that as well. But the PD schedule actually will extrapolate to all PD, like the whole PD schedule for every educator, what types of meetings they'll have and when they'll have them, will be scripted out for the year. So I think that's a big comfort. I remember I met Kat for the second time in my life last year in May, and she wanted to do some of this work in the summer, and I couldn't facilitate it for her. I just there was a lot going on in June, as you remember, and she just wanted to know, and her teachers just wanted to know, can we have 3 sessions over the summer? Can we get this work done? Will it be approved? Will you give us PDP?
Looking back, I'm really sorry. And I was like, hi, so I need time and I need some teacher stuff. And you're gonna,
and
you
I'm
just went like,
embarrassed to say that it went down to like 8, right? The first thing was the budget, and oh my God, there's nothing in circuit breaker, so what are we gonna do for vacancies, and what does Katie say, and but now we're on our feet. We have a foundation of work, we're planning ahead, we're moving the work in a thoughtful way, and that will continue, and we hope to do that again for the summer of 27. This is gonna be the summer of 26, and that curriculum cycle, which I think Carla will talk about when she presents, is something that we're gonna let the district know. We really need a curriculum review cycle, as Kat hinted to and Carla has mentioned and we've talked about. That's gonna have to be put in place, not by this team, but by the next team. This has to happen every 7 years for every subject, and they should rotate in a way that one comes up every year for a review, and then an implementation, and then that there's a system that's not complicated, but you just have to be dedicated to the work and support the work in a consistent way. And that's what we hope to kind of shore up that process and kind of lift it a little bit for the following summer of 27. But we also want to make sure that whatever we're doing is something that will not be then changed with someone else coming in. So we're assessing, what do the directors need, what do the principals need, and what can we do that might not be changed, that just building good muscle to Lizzie's point. But there's definitely some things that we need to put in place that can replicate this for math, science, social studies, world language, and all the other subjects that warrant the same attention and the same gold standard approach. You're the best, Kat DeRoche.
Thank
Yeah.
you all enough. It's
Yeah.
exciting. As I
Very
said,
exciting.
we're here. There's
It's
a
gonna be
roller coaster
awesome.
ahead, but it's gonna be great.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's gonna be
Kat,
so
I
good.
have a quick question.
Yes.
How does this, like this implementing this curriculum now, like when you get to middle school, like do you
Yes.
have to look at what's
Mhm.
happening there and make any adjustments?
Yeah, so not in the middle school, well, we joke about, you know, the middle child syndrome type of thing. We are doing that work this year in our departments. You know, as you know, 5 years ago now, coming up on 6, we implemented a curriculum to mixed enthusiasm. And over the last 2 years, we've really talked about standards more so than the resource. So I think when we talk about a primary curricular resource, it's important that we don't just say like a program, like we're not robots, teachers bring lots of skills. So we've spent this year in our department meetings looking at what are the units of study we teach, using the Amplify resource and just what's good practice. And we're weighing out whether or not we truly need the platform any longer, or if it's something we're going to take offline and supplement with novels, which would be a budgetary wash. There's no implication for cost there. And so this work is continuing there. It's more so of a reflect and tweak than a reflect and upend everything, which I think works better at the secondary level, in my limited teaching experience there, but in this type of role. And so there are implications as we go up, and it also is important. The other layer to this will be, and I'm trying to like slow it down and not force this to happen immediately, but that 3 to 8, there's a 3 to 8 scope to look at as well, in particular as it looks at writing and how we prepare students with the approach to certain genres of writing and the language we use, and to really try to be more consistent so that as students matriculate through 5, 6, 7, 8, it's we're speaking the same language and using the same terms. So it's a good point. It's definitely something we're doing currently. But something that's a little more, because it's more contained in like one building and I'm there and can meet with them every 7 days. It requires, I don't want to say less work, it requires less coordination to kind of make those adjustments, but it's happening, so it's good. Yeah.
That's exciting. Thank you.
Thanks for asking. Yeah, it's good. Awesome. All right, hope you guys have a great night. Thanks for having me.
Thanks,
Thank you for all your work.
Thank
and
you.
everything.
We're talking about the approval of the Milton High School trip.
So thank you, these are not votes, these are just first blushes for us to put in front of you. You can have either Karen Cahill or the sponsors come to the following meeting to give you more detail. The first trip I'd like to mention is the trip that we will have going abroad in the school year of 26-27. So this is for next April. So it's a year away. So if we can get this approved by the end of this year, then all of our students can prepare, fundraise, and begin to think about if they want to go and how they can support that. So this is very similar to what we've provided to you earlier in the year that we did not do this trip this year. So we just wanted to get it up and get it going. This is April of 27. If we need Ms. Younger or Zena Hamada or Karen Cahill to come and represent this, we just wanted to put it on your radar screen as more on the plate, and then we can come back with a more deeper conversation about the trip. That's out of the country. That's why it needs to be voted by the school committee. The second trip is a one-day trip out of state. It's a Friday, leave Friday after school, sleep overnight and camp and hike. It's the Milton High Outdoors Club. This is happening this year. It's obviously less complicated than going to Europe, but this club wanted to make sure that they had a chance to go and take an excursion. They'll go to Maine on a Friday night. They'll camp out in a campground that's been already chosen, and then they'll hike all day Saturday and come home Saturday afternoon, Saturday night. This has a little bit more urgency because they'll be doing it this year. And so we'll have them back in a follow-up meeting to give you the detail for an official vote.
About these field trips, like is the one to Spain and Paris,
happened before.
Yeah, is that a recurring one?
Successfully happened before. I'm not sure whether this is new or not. I like that there's no school missed for that one. That's very helpful. And also, I think that when we spoke about the trip to Europe before, I think it would be very helpful to have this trip on an every other year cadence. That way, if I'm going in as a family, I'm in 8th grade and I know that this might be available to me 2 times during the school year, during my 4 years at Milton High. So if I can't do it sophomore year, I might be able to do it senior year, or if it runs and I happen to be a freshman or a junior. It would be nice to get this on a scheduled cadence of every other year. It's hard for the staff to commit every year, and it's hard to get these things up and running every year. So my recommendation is that if we did these every other year, it would give every family at least 2 opportunities to do it in their 4 years at the high school, and that would allow them to prepare financially and think about if they would like to do it or not. And this is open to all students. It's not just open to any one student in any one language program. And it's always been a very successful run program.
One quick question maybe for when we talk again, but agreeing with the point you just made about, it does seem to say that priority given to current 10th and 11th grade students rather than freshmen, but it doesn't mention seniors. And given that the trip hasn't run this year, I'm just thinking about the,
Folks that missed it last year, didn't have a
And
chance to.
would there be any opportunity for them to receive priority, or at least to be considered if they're seniors, as that's not named here? Even if that's sort of a one-time, like, you know.
This might mean juniors who are juniors this year, because they're
this
signing
year's
up.
juniors, okay,
And they would be the seniors for next year,
So next year's juniors and seniors.
okay,
because they'll be putting this out to everybody this year to get ready for next year. So this year's juniors would be next year's seniors. Because they'd be going in there, that would be their senior year.
Thank you, that makes sense.
Then to that point is that I think the wording should be more precise if we are rolling this out next year.
We will be rolling this out in the spring to get kids ready so they can start to prepare. So we'll hope to have this approved by the end of the school year. So students can, to your point, roll it out in a way that's effective. And if there's any language shifts that you think are important and how that happens, we certainly will take that feedback as well. And it might be helpful for Zena or Claire to come in and give you more detail about what that looks like.
And I was curious, I know I was looking at the cost, and this came up in a meeting the other day on our DEIB committee about, are there like payment plans built in so that families can start paying like perhaps a year in advance?
I don't know the answer to it. I know some trips do that, and it really helps to have an installment, like a 6-month plan for, I don't know the answer to that, but we'll get you that answer.
Okay.
It's $4,600. It's a lot of money, but if you were doing that in $300 chunks to get, and put a
Over
down
the
payment
course of
on.
a year,
Yeah.
12 months or something.
Which is why you wanna let them know now.
Yeah, that's why we
This
wanna do
is
it.
great.
Yeah.
That's great.
John, just to comment on the camping trip, so I don't wanna derail the discussion about Spain and France, so I just wanna keep talking about that. Okay. I know this is a much smaller scale. First of all, I think it's great that this is happening, and the amount, I read this the other day, or a couple weeks ago, that the rates of camping among youth have absolutely plummeted over the last 10 years. So I think it's great that there's an outdoors club. I didn't know that. I sort of want to be like the staff sponsor. And I think it's
We
great
can
that
provide the land in the reservations.
and, I mean, if they ever want to come camping on any of our properties, happy to have them. So I think this is awesome. The one thing that stuck out to me is that would be helpful to get clarified when we vote on this is who will be trained in. They're going to Mount Monadnock, which it's like the safest place to go hiking because there's just people everywhere. But who will actually have first aid training, and whether this would be a good chance for the whole outdoors club, if they're not, to get first aid trained before the trip. because what I assume the adult will be trained, but if the adult has an injury, I wanna make sure that there's someone else there who can help the adult.
That's a great feedback, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. We'll put this back on the agenda for a vote over the next few meetings.
So the next item is chair's report. So we're not going through the presentation, but as we all know, so Monday, we're meeting virtually, excuse me, to vote to approve the FY27 budget. Tuesday, we're meeting, it's a full school committee meeting with, it's open to full school committee meeting with the warrant committee to review the FY27 budget, and entertain any questions, have that presentation to them. We've gotten, I think by today was the deadline for getting all the questions, so we asked them ahead of time if they would share any questions that they have so that we can be prepared for so that the presentation answers that. And we just thought it was important that whatever we're presenting is the approved budget. So approve it on Monday and present it on Tuesday. So people can be there. I have to be there virtually. I won't be in town. So Mark will be leading the discussion and presentation with John and Katie. But that's just the plan for that night. So I don't know if anybody had any questions or about that. But we're still working through the presentation deck. We talked about that a bit during finance subcommittee today, making sure that we're hitting all the salient points. So if people can make it, that would be great. All right, that is all I had. Finance subcommittee reports.
Yeah, so again, today walked through some of the slides. We got some great feedback, and so we'll update those slightly. They're in the folder, which all of you have access to, but as we kind of try and refine them a bit more, I've taken some of that feedback. Just kind of email out a link so y'all can look at it. So we can't, it is a cool sheet, but we can't collaboratively work on it, but if you'd like to download it and then share any thoughts or feedback individually with Katie, John, obviously, but me as just kind of one member, and that should be fine. But yeah, but again, there are some changes we already note we need to make, and I'll try and let y'all know once we've at least kind of made that first round of revisions. So if you apologize for the tight turnarounds, we hope to do better next year with the whole budget timeline. Other things we discussed over the last 2 weeks have been some of the fees. We had a fantastic presentation from Martha Sandoval about the community schools, and so there's a fee document within the meeting for tonight, and that's over to Katie here in a bit in case there's additional context that we want to give on that, but ultimately kind of looking at what the proposed fees need to be for the community schools program in order to address some just kind of current operating challenges in terms of the expenses versus revenues, and how we try and right size that to make sure it is a self-sustaining program, but still available to our staff and to all of our families, as important as it is. And so that was a good discussion last week. This week, we looked at some of the other fees, transportation related to clubs, high school clubs in particular, and related into some building usage fees. Department made a proposal, we talked that through and voted kind of recommendation. So we voted both a recommendation for the Milton Community Schools and for the other fees. I think maybe we'll just kind of take them one by one.
We don't have the other fees listed as a vote for tonight, so we can't take, I don't see it on the agenda. We only have community schools.
So the workaround for that would be to your point, Mark, both the community schools, and then on our agenda for the 16th, where we're voting the FY27 budget, we can actually vote the fees separately because they are basically embedded into the FY27 budget.
Yeah.
So it's certainly we can just so that we can make sure that happens in in the same night, so I apologize for not having it on here.
It's no problem. Yeah, so that's great. Yeah, we voted them today, reviewed them today because they are part of kind of the budget recommendation. Additional kind of $75,000 with fees collected was a portion of the budget. And so that was kind of what was pushing that timeline, and obviously we want to give families a heads up as soon as we can. So
Can I
yeah,
ask a
oh,
question
please.
back to the FY27 budget, the Monday? So even like this evening, there have been some different mentions of that 110,000 for, the curriculum, PD stipends, the block backfilling Title I, the nurse director position. So those, for the Monday night discussion, will there be a sort of, if there's an updated recommendation, will that be shared, or what is the sort of, if there, or maybe it's to be determined as part of the bottom line budget process, like going forward after it's been approved with that flexibility still built in? Is there any, like, how is that gonna happen for Monday?
One way it could happen is you could give Katie and I questions that you want us to answer for you on Monday. Specific to especially, if the question is, do we feel like we have enough money for supporting the PD next year? Is the money that we set aside for that in the budget that may have been reduced to support some of the reductions? We can review that and come back with a resounding yes or a concern and say we need to pull money aside. Right now, if I was to vote tonight, I would, given the feedback that we're receiving about the school director, the nurse director, I'm not hearing any feedback from the school committee to change that recommendation. We are getting a lot of feedback on that from the community. But if anybody wants that to be discussed, we can discuss it right now if you want. We might want to answer some of those questions right now. I think the community might want to hear from the committee as to what you want or don't want or want us to think about. And we will gladly, I think it's important to have that discussion in front of the public. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So in my brain, moving forward is, if there's no changes discussed tonight, then we're gonna carry forward the same budget to be voted.
Okay.
And if there's a little worry about PD and or the textbook line that we did have to reduce a little bit, we can review that and make sure that we give you an answer to that on Monday night. That we do think there's enough money in it, or we might need to take some of that out to support it from the 110. And as far as we just learned about the Title I money just the end of last week, so we're really trying to get more information from DESE. But it does look like it might be a full reduction to zero. I think other districts are getting a certain percentage reduced, but we happen to be going down to zero. So that's attached to a person's salary that we do not want to reduce. So right now, my tendency is to use those dollars to support Title I and make that whole. That money can come from the 110. That money can come from taking more out of circuit breaker, which I would not recommend because I think we've already hit that line. And it's also something that we might want to bring up with the warrant committee when we start talking about where should that $500,000 land, whether it should land in the account that the town and that the select board and the school committee have, or should some of that money land in the schools in order to support things like that. The flexibility of our budget needs to be robust enough to handle the ups and downs of a school year. And I worry that if we start taking a little bit more out of any of these accounts, to your point, Mark, we might not have enough PD money, or we might not have the ability to hire that one-to-one aide in March for a young person that needs it at some point next year. Or so the flexibility is very, very important to us, but also having funds in all those flexible lines is where we get the flexibility. So I think that might come up at warrant committee as well. But I think we should vote the bottom line of this is the money that we're going to spend. But so if there's specific questions that you all want answered, we can bring those answers. But absent anything else said tonight, I was going to move forward with what we presented.
So now is the time to,
I think so.
before we do the fees piece,
Yeah.
we do this. Okay, that's very clarifying. And I think, just to build off what you just said, because I think the community, you know, it's helpful to remind our community members, including our colleagues that serve on other committees and boards, you know, the reason the school committee and the school department has a bottom line budget is because that need for flexibility exists in every district. And so that's why Mass General Law is set up that way. So I think that this isn't unique to Milton, and this isn't, you know, this school committee wanting it to be this way. This is the law that we're following in terms of the process. So the flexibility, I really underscore and agree with that point. I think I am very concerned about the lack of Title I funds for Tucker. So I'm relieved to hear you say that you would want to be committed to retaining the support that has provided.
Dollar for dollar.
Dollar for dollar, like that would be unacceptable to me if we didn't replace those funds somehow. Now, I would love to think that maybe the state can somehow step in and so like address that, because it just you know, really shocking, but yet not surprising, I suppose, that we're in this position. But you know, hopefully something can be done to help. On the nurse director position, I would honestly be interested if there are thoughts or questions. I think my main takeaway about it, based on the heartfelt feedback we've been receiving, which as we all do, I genuinely appreciate the people who've been sharing their perspectives about it. I think for me, having looked at the research, and thank you, Mark, for sharing some of that, but there are other, you know, and even other districts that are successfully managing with a nurse lead, districts that are our size and or even bigger. So I think for me, it's perhaps continued messaging, if we stay with that plan, to help reassure the community of like the ways that we will ensure that we are not, you know, failing to keep students safe, that we are not exposing the district to liability, like through that decision. You know what I mean? I think maybe we haven't been able to do quite enough of that explanation. And so people are understandably, you know, I think fearful of what that change might mean and how, if we move forward with that change. I'm not saying we need to do this by Monday, but I just think it would be important to really help be more detailed with the rationale behind that. Do you know what I mean? Because so far, I think we've been hearing a lot of assumptions that people are making about what the outcome would be of having a nurse lead rather than a nurse director. They, you know, from what I'm seeing, they're not like necessarily data informed. They're based, I mean, people's experiences are data. I'm not trying to discount that, but I think that it's a lot of worrying about what might happen if we return to that model. And I share a lot of those, you know, concerns. I have type 1 diabetes. I identify a lot with the kids that require like monitoring throughout the day. They need to have that support. Absolutely. I identify with the parents. So I just think there's, you know, maybe we can follow through with that if we end up, you know, deciding that we really aren't in a position to bring that position back. And that could be, you know, I think you've done a nice job of responding to individuals' concerns. Maybe we can share more openly, like publicly, in a kind of proactive way to help explain that decision, if it's the decision that we come to. But the Title I thing to me is like, that's, if we didn't have that news, I think I would be sitting here more interested in like really exploring putting the nurse director role back in. I think I have a little pause though from that latest development. Personally, sorry, I just put that all out there. What do you all think?
Go ahead. I'm just wondering, like, in that situation, if we have two nurses out sick, what will happen?
So right now that happens. So the nurse director is responsible to interview and hire substitute nurses, which we also do for substitute teachers. There is a list of folks that we call whenever there's someone out in any one of the schools. The nurse lead would just do the same thing. That list would be in their hands. Those calls would be made by that person. A lot of the functions that I think folks are worried about will be fulfilled by the nurse lead, who will be the quasi-administrator of the nursing department and the nursing team. So in that circumstance, the nurse would call a substitute nurse, that nurse would report. What happens if there's not enough? That happened on Monday. On Monday, we got text Sunday night. Carla and I were texting back and forth with the nurse director. We had no nurse at the high school. The nurse director had to go to one of the elementary schools. The parents of students that had high intense medical needs were notified that the nurse would be in that day and that the medications would be handed out differently unless they wanted to come in and do so, which is our protocol. And that day went as smoothly as possible. That's certainly the worst situation that you're going to be in. That's only happened twice. I think that's the second time that that's happened all year. So in terms of calling substitutes, having substitutes trained, working with them, that would all happen with the nurse lead. The difference is in the families who have given us this feedback, it's accurate, is how much time will they have to do that if they also have to be part of a building? We actually, I asked Katie, and through our budgeting, we put money aside for substitutes so that nurse lead on a regular basis can have time away from their building and have a substitute there in order to support screenings that might happen or an outbreak of something. This year we had a health issue in one of the locker rooms at the high school for one of the sports teams, or if there's something that needs to happen and it's an IEP meeting at one of the elementaries, and the nurse director might be a good support for that. They can plan to call us up for that day. What we do have to do a better job of, whether it's a nurse director or a nurse lead, is get more people on that nurse sub list. We need more people on the teacher sub list, and we need more people on the nurse sub list. So a lot of those functions will be filled by someone who would get a stipend and be the building nurse. And my idea for the 110 before the Title I was to kind of keep it there in case we needed to hire a float. If we really felt that we didn't have enough nurses on the sub list and we needed to hire just another position. So right now we have a nurse director, 6 building nurses in 1 float. We're trying to say out loud that we'd have 6 nurses in buildings, one of which is the lead, and then an additional float. If we needed to have a second float, I was going to keep this $110,000 aside and pull that lever when I thought we experienced it to the need to be in place. Again, more seeing students and having the student-facing position being the larger priority than the administrative part. But in all my conversations with folks, I've been very open. You know, there's a subjective view of that. I would prefer, if I'm a school nurse, which I heard directly from them, I would prefer to have that heavy on the director's side because I like to be able to call and get that call right back. So that's their view, and that's a very respectful view. I have some folks saying, I don't want to send my child to school without a nurse, and I'm nervous there's never enough subs. And if you have 2 floats or 1 float, that might be better. And so I hear both sides of that. There's no perfect answer. There's no right or wrong. This is just trying to make a judgment on what the best service delivery is for a department of 6 folks.
That feedback, I think, is very important. The feedback around just wanting more student-facing nurse capacity in the buildings. That was always part of your rationale. So, yeah.
I think at the end of the day, I know we've gotten a lot of feedback on a lot of positions that were initially on the reduction list. And I know community members feel very strongly about them, but at the end of the day, I feel like you all have the best picture of what's going on and where those resources need to be put. They're not just sitting there, they're going somewhere else. So I think having that understanding, like going with your best judgment on where those funds need to be used as what we look to your expertise for. Because the other stuff is just like, I know everyone feels strongly about different positions, you know, but at the end of the day, that's, you can look at that and say, okay, I get that's important, but we really need to use that somewhere else. So it's just like, we're trying to figure this out and do those like good news stories like the curriculum and all of those other things that have also been put on hold for years, right? So trying to make it all work. So I feel like, you know, I'm been very comfortable with your decisions from the very beginning in terms of how you've handled it. So continue to support you in those.
Yeah, I'm good where we're landing. I understand the arguments back and forth on director of nursing. I think, I don't think we can have 100% certainty on what it's going to look like next year. This is a decision with risk. You just outlined a whole bunch of them. And I also trust that you and the team are going to be monitoring the risk and respond to it. I think at the end of the day, we have to trust the management team.
Yeah.
And all of the principals and school leaders who you bring in who, you know, we've spent 2 months wrestling these questions to the ground. I know you all are doing it in the district every single day. And, you know, we're talking about this $150,000 that we might have to backfill the Title I, or maybe we have it as flex money. I think it's just, I just did the it's like 1/10 of 1% of our entire budget.
So
It's like
sad.
nothing.
It's really sad.
And so I think wherever we can create flexibility for ourselves, we cannot turn that opportunity down if it doesn't, you know, jeopardize our core mission. And I think this is one of those choices we have to make.
So thank you for that. Two things. One is, we did meet with the principals and the leadership team, and there seemed to be consensus that keeping the lead nurse decision, that decision and reducing the nurse director was the outcome of that meeting on Tuesday, and that's been pretty consistent. The other part is, the flexibility has to be supported by the financial flexibility within the budget. So when we look at that, we put 4 positions back by creating a 4-year plan for our circuit breaker and getting there in a little longer term. You know, I still want to go back to this discussion that I think is still open, that this $500,000 from the town that was part of this discussion, that was a part in the discussion the whole time. I think we need to revisit, because the flexibility comes only when you have the funds to be able to be flexible.
Yep.
There are districts out there right now. Newton Public Schools is short this year. Brookline Public Schools is short this year. We were short last year. We were short the year before. They have the same struggles we have at different scales, but you know, Katie did a wonderful job of placing the dollars in the budget this year where we knew the needs would become apparent throughout the year, and we had the ability to address them throughout the year. And you know, we made people work for those things. They have to sit. That's why every time Kat said budget, she looked at Katie like that, and that's a good thing. But the reality is, we need to be able to say yes when we have to say yes.
Yeah.
And you have to say yes because you need a medical situation resolved or some sort of a situation resolved. But the flexibility of having reserves, and it's interesting, Mark, you dug into the financial consultants report from the town, and schools don't have that many reserves. This is not that we have like savings accounts for all different stuff, but the circuit breaker account through the consultant that we met with, Katie and I did earlier in the summer, basically says school departments should rebuild that circuit breaker account. This is the recommendation by a company that the town hired at the end of last year when they were concerned about the fiscal stability of the district. And I think that Katie's response to the consistency and the way that we're approaching the budget in a way that makes sure every line has what it needs in order to deal with the anticipated needs of our students and the unanticipated things that may happen, so we never have to say to someone, no, we can't get that for you, is important. And this is one of the vehicles that helps us do that. And it's nice to have that outside expertise come into the town at the town's recommendation to say, this is something that you should be building up. I'd like to take this to the warrant committee next Tuesday. I think it just provides a little bit of support. The bottom line authority of the budget is a very important tool, as Lizzie pointed out earlier. So we need to have those lines full enough to be able to adapt and pivot when we need to, without dismantling any parts of our quote traditional budget, because 81% of it is people. So we were Brookline for the last 2 years. We were Newton for the last 2 years, and we don't want to be there. And in 80 districts out of the 365 in the Commonwealth are considering overrides this year. So we're not alone. This is not a Milton thing. This is a period of time where finances are hard, one-time money evaporated, folks wanted to provide more services because kids deserved it and needed it, and now there's a reconciliation of that across the state. This is not a Milton thing. People are not doing anything wrong. We're trying to provide the best services we can with the dollars we have, and those dollars happen to be a little less than what they used to be without federal support. So when we look at bellwethers like Brookline and Newton, and they're challenged, I'm really happy that our town stepped up last year, voted the override that everybody else would like to see, and that we're using those dollars very effectively. And it's really important for the town to know that. And the PTO presidents were really more concerned, as I said earlier, about what are we doing over the next few years versus what are we doing right now. We kind of get right now, but we really need to focus moving forward. And so that's our work for them. They deserve an answer to that.
John, you mentioned the $500,000 that they talked about at the select board meeting. Could you kind of provide some context?
Sure. Consistent, Nick Milano has been a very consistent and good partner to Katie and I in the schools. Said that there might be the ability to give the schools $500,000 of one-time revenue to be able to put in reserves, because those reserves were low when we started the year. Need by reserves for folks who haven't been maybe at every meeting. Some accounts that had been depleted that normally have balances of a certain amount of money. One we all talk about a lot is circuit breaker. Should be somewhere about 75% of your circuit breaker number, which is somewhere around $2.7 million. That's what's supported by that consultant. So Nick thought it would be good for us to have that money to start that work and seed that account first. And then when the money was short for next year, he said, and if you need to offset anything and do anything with personnel to bring anything off that reduction list, that certainly was agreeable to him. He's been consistently advocating for that with us. I think that I don't want to speak for anybody in the select board, but last night I feel like the vote was to put it into the school committee / select board special ed account, which requires a vote of the school committee and the select board. It can only be accessed for one-time unexpected expenses that you may have in a year. So it doesn't give you that flexibility to be able to say out loud, geez, we need another aid because a student came to us and needs this, or we need something else. This is kind of in the closet up high in the shoebox that we'd have to go and explain and actually meet the criterion of the law that governs that account. That was part of Governor Baker's Municipalities Act about 7 years ago, and it has rules to it that we would have to then comply with in order to have that vote taken. That could take 3 weeks, that could take 2 months, that could be a yes, that could be a no, and it would have to be a one-time unexpected cost. Those are the questions that you would have to ask Katie and I, and the select board would have to ask Katie and I. We might not reach that measurement, and folks might say no. So the flexibility of having it within the school budget, within the circuit breaker account, which is explicitly, by the way, in front of everybody in every quarterly report that we provide. And also in our planning for next year, in our 4-year plan is articulated very clearly in the slides that we've already presented. That's an important tool for that flexibility. So I would friendly, in a very appropriate way, say that I would rather see those dollars in our circuit breaker account versus that, because it's more accessible, more usable for these other special education needs that we may have in the district to take care of students before they go out of district, as one example. So there's a lot of moving parts to that, and hopefully we can educate folks, and maybe that might be a different outcome, but.
Can I just add to that? So we started talking about the Special Education Stabilization Fund last year. And I think a piece of that, it was brought up in conversation because I've worked in 2 districts where we've either established the fund or I worked in the district where the fund was already established. And so I've actually seen the Special Education Stabilization Fund in practice. And so when I think about what their proposal or some of the conversations that are happening about the $500,000, the Special Education Stabilization Fund is really just meant for a significant expense that happens during the fiscal year when you've already set your budget. So that you don't have to impact any areas of operations otherwise. You don't have to freeze hiring, you don't have to tell teachers that they can't have paper anymore, and that is what the intent is. But those expenses that stabilization fund is paying for, those aren't just one-time expenses. So it's not like we take that money out of the account, we go and we say, we have this unbudgeted expense, we're gonna take the money out of the account. And then that expense doesn't go away.
Right.
That expense is a reoccurring expense. So what you then have to do is you have to budget for it elsewhere because the stabilization fund is not reoccurring. There's gonna be $500,000 that is put into it. We'll have the ability to take the money out at one point during the year. And then if the expense matches what's in that account, then the money's gone and we have to find some other way to pay for it. And so just thinking about like the mechanism of it, the intent of it really is just to lessen the blow if something happens during the year or lessen the impact to other areas of operation. But it's not meant to be a long-term fiscal budgeting tool for reoccurring expenses. And so I just wanted to mention that because, again, I've been in districts that have either newly established them and then operationalized it or already had it and operationalized it. And I think that's just a really important, like, thinking about how we were gonna use them. We've kind of been talking about it, there's zero in the account right now. We've been talking about it just kind of hypothetically. And I just have concerns about it because circuit breaker isn't fully funded right now.
So I think one of the things that Nathan brought up a good point, and I think it goes to sort of all of the decisions and recommendations that have been made, which is we look to the people who have the expertise and the experience in doing this. So John, Katie, Carla, as we're, through all of these. So when there are positions that we talk about reducing, there's a thought process that goes into it that says, we're reducing this, but when we talk about some of the, like the special ed positions that were reduced, we're recognizing that this position is being reduced, but we're asking these other people to absorb some of the responsibilities. It's not that the role is going away, there's another mechanism for doing it. And so we look to you guys and we say, and the leadership teams and all that's a collective decision that's been made based on expertise and experience. And I feel like this is a very similar scenario that we've gotten a recommendation about the best use of that $500,000 based on the way your understanding of the budget, the planning, the flexibility that we need and the reserves. And I'm candidly, I'm frustrated because I feel like we're being asked to use your expertise, but then it feels a bit like we're dismissing the expertise and we're saying that there's a recommendation to put the money elsewhere and not recognizing that it's been very thoughtful. All of these decisions have been very thoughtful about changes that are being made or resources being allocated in a particular place to ensure budget stability so that we aren't in a position that we were last year. And to your point in addressing the concerns of those parents, that they were beginning to build a plan so that we have that financial stability, not just this year, but in the years to come. And so it just feels a little bit like second guessing the experts. And I just, for me, I candidly am just frustrated about that piece because I feel like there's a very clear and understandable rationale for why we want to put the money, why we are asking for that money to go or recommending that money goes into that circuit breaker account. So, sorry, go ahead. Anne.
Okay, so the account that the select board is recommending that we put that money into, how are we, if that's where it sits, then what are we gonna do about reserves? Like, how would we ever start even building that?
So
I guess,
what we will continue to do what we do on our side, which is what we've done. We've already seeded our own circuit breaker accounts. We've already seeded meaning put money in the balances of our athletic department and the other revolving accounts, and we'll continue to build those year in and year out incrementally. In the worry about having the 500 go into that other account is that, and this was talked about at our longer range meeting, we don't know that the town will be able to deposit 500 a year in that account to grow it if we have to withdraw from it. They might not have the free cash that year, and the select board might change, the school committee will change. And so we could look to that account and all of a sudden it could have a very low balance. It might not address the need that we might have that one-time need. So the ability to address it within the school budget and have that be explicitly available. And also we talked about having it a very clear guidance that the school committee will never go below a certain number in that account. So we're gonna take 4 years to build it to where it should be. And to Katie's point, some people have that account when they're already full. When our circuit breaker is at the correct balance and you wanna put $500,000 over there just in case, that's like a belts and suspenders thing, right? That's how it's supposed to happen. We're still building ourselves from $8,000
right,
and trying to get to about 2.7 to 3 million.
right,
So we feel like that money there needs to go here to build that to the right
Right,
spot.
exactly.
And then when we get that to the right spot, if there's extra free cash, which there very rarely is in any town, because we need money for facilities, we need money for capital, we need money for our insurance savings account, so there's a lot of places for this money to go. But then it would be valuable to have that account built up a little bit on behalf of the schools. We're just not there yet. We're 3 to 4 years away from that. So, and I just think that when we do get to that place of being whole, and we would not need to ask for more money from the town to incrementally add to it, because we'd be at a spot where and then that money could flow to operations or flow back to the town, or we wouldn't have to ask for as much because we're there. Our balance sheet is where it's supposed to be. So it's just, I think it's just good fiscal planning. But
so do we have an opportunity to advocate to the select board to or is that decision already been made?
Yeah, I'll throw in a little color here. So we didn't get a heads up, at least I didn't get a heads up that they were voting on that last night. They made the decision. They did so without, we talked about it a bit at the February, kind of, I guess the last meeting we had with them in February, something like that. A bit about it, all the messaging from Nick, as John has said, has been supportive of the idea of putting it within the FY26 operating budget in order to help us build back the circuit breaker more quickly. I've been disappointed with the messaging of some members of the select board. And it's also happened a little bit at the warrant committee as well. And so again, the vote took us a bit by surprise. I'm not sure. I guess technically they could change their vote. The warrant committee also could recommend something different. Town meeting could go against the recommendation of the select board or change that on the town floor. So there are avenues. It's probably much less likely without the select board supporting that.
Did they give a rationale as to why, or why that was a better decision, I guess?
So I hesitate because I have not watched the full select board meeting. So I hesitate to speculate, and maybe other people have. I think, it is an account that they have oversight of. And so I think that is attractive to them from the select board side. I think, as I try and think of it, when we talked about this, to your point of, are we building up reserves? When we have looked at the circuit breaker build up, looked at this last year, we wanted to have a mechanism within the school committee's control to
Right.
build up those reserves. Because we saw last year how difficult it was going to select board for additional funding and
Yes.
how resistant they were to provide that even in crisis moments. And so we said, we need to create this. We did that through the override, thanks to Katie's leadership. And so we are projecting to end this year in a much better fiscal state with that. As we looked at the increased utilization of circuit breaker and as we were getting some pressure from community members, rightly so, around, that versus the cuts, that was definitely one of the things we prioritized within the conversations with the finance committee was utilizing it more in order to alleviate the cuts, but
Yes.
still needing to leave funding available that we can continue to build this up, because even $1 million at the end of this year is not it's not a reasonable number. So we
Yeah.
need to have that opportunity. We still have that when we were having these discussions. We talked about, we should assume we're not gonna get the $500,000. We should make a decision we feel comfortable with, assuming we're not, because it wasn't 100% clear we were. And so I feel glad we led the conversation with that, because that
Yes.
is kind of what has
Sure.
come to pass. And I agree with all the points John has made around it. The Special Ed Stabilization Fund is still an account that supports our schools in a moment of crisis. And so for that, appreciative of
Right.
that consideration. It is just not, again, as flexible as an account, and I totally agree with Nathan's point, and other people have made it too, is just, I think, flexibility in a place where we started with $8,000 in circuit breaker and where we've been in just financial crisis the last 2 years is paramount.
Yeah.
And so I would really have appreciated them to lean on the expertise, as you said, of the people we hired to do this. Again, the one person in this district who has experience with a stabilization fund is recommending something. I'm a little frustrated that members of those other committees also have not taken opportunities to sit and learn from that member who could say, the one person with the actual expertise. So those things are frustrating, that boards aren't just kind of seeing eye to eye on it.
And I think the challenge, like John mentioned, with the Title I funding going away, those unexpected things, even though it's a very tiny portion of our overall budget, we need every penny, at this point. So I think having that flexibility to, kind of build those reserves in case of emergency and using it, so that, we're offering the best possible services to our kids is so important. But I think if it's one time, like you said, and we can't do that, and it has to kind of be rolled into the operating budget where we can't sustain that, that's also a bigger issue. Because then we're back to this next year.
And I don't question the positive intent of the school, of the select board.
Yes,
I think that they're putting $500,000 is a lot of money in a spot for the schools to be able to use if they need it. And I think I appreciate that. I appreciate them putting the money aside. I appreciate them identifying the need. There's just disagreement on the vehicle, right? And so I appreciate that they didn't put that all into capital or something else that surely has a need as well. So I appreciate the good intent, and I appreciate the putting the money aside. I just feel, I think the vehicle could be a different one in order to provide the schools the maximum flexibility and to do all that in-house for all the reasons that we said. So, and we want to work and build relationships. So when we continue to have these conversations about, I'm already thinking about FY28. I want the count. Let's get the calendar straight. Let's make sure people are really clear on why we're thinking what we're thinking, what our big why is, and what our strategy is, and what that is differs from other people's philosophy, and then just let's settle on a philosophy and move forward. And like we've always said, there should be no discussion about the strategy of having a robust circuit breaker account every year. Every district should, and that's the guidance that they gave us, that the town hired. What should be a debate every year is the smaller discussion of how much of it, you're getting there quicker than you thought. Geez, all the dominoes fell your way and a lot of things happen. You have more in that account. Can you hold off on adding to that? And can you pull a little bit back? That I would call that a lowercase strategy. So every year we should have this discussion, but it shouldn't be about whether there's value to having a circuit breaker account at a healthy level. It should be about, are you there yet? Are you almost there yet? Can we lose a little, can we shift a little of that revenue? That should happen openly in front of everybody every year.
So just to give the benefit of the doubt to the select board and with the opportunity of going to warrant committee next week, I would like to suggest we take an opportunity to get very specific about almost, I'm envisioning like side by side, circuit breaker, special ed reserve account. Like what the scenario of a typical need that might come up mid-year that can be addressed a certain way through circuit breaker and maybe not through like I almost with this same frustration and just trying to breathe in, breathe out about I just feel like maybe we need to really lean in to walking people through it in a way that there's no reasonable way they could fail to understand the difference. You know, I'm just wondering if there's a little bit more we can do on that. And the warrant committee feels like the perfect opportunity because as you're pointing to, Mark, at the end of the day, this all gets decided on the floor of town meeting. And, you know, there are 3 bodies that weigh in on it to inform town meeting in their decision. And the warrant committee is one of those bodies. You know, I think if we can make some progress in helping to just boil it down so basically, and maybe people will still not take the recommendation of the consultant that we all agreed we should pay to provide us with third-party expertise. You know, if we're not in a position to accept at face value the recommendation of our town's school finance expert, as we've said, which you're such an asset, Katie. Like, who doesn't see that? I'm not sure what they're paying attention to, but I just feel like boil it down, and if they still don't agree, they still don't agree. Okay, we can explain the rationale on the floor of town meeting. But, you know, the fact of the recommendation from the consultant, like that's validating, you know? And I think my question is, it's nice, is it a fair part of boiling it down? Is it fair to sort of say that the circuit breaker is like a need to have? The special ed reserve account is a nice to have. And when that came, right, that's sort of once you're, like you were talking about the districts you've been in that have the special ed reserve account. And you were speaking, John, to the fact that like it would be great to put 500,000 into that special ed reserve account once we've hit our goal on circuit breaker. But it's premature to fund the special ed reserve account if we've not yet met our goal on circuit breaker, right? And in your prior districts where you have this experience, was circuit breaker in a healthier space than ours is? When they sort of embark upon special ed reserve?
Right, and I think that's, so yes, in both districts, I believe that circuit breaker was at least at 80% or it was fully funded, so we had a full year in reserve. And then we had a financial policy that said that if the school department had any funds that remained in our operating budget at the end of the year, that typically those funds go back to the town and then those funds become certified through free cash and then they're available for kind of whatever. We had a policy that said if there were funds available at the end of the year that we didn't spend, they'd be certified as free cash and then they would go into the stabilization fund. So it was almost, we had a mechanism that it became repetitive, self-sustaining, and something that we kind of had I don't wanna say complete control over, but
Predictability.
predictability and
which
And
is what we
and
need.
funding.
incentivized, you know, cause
Yes.
whatever money you were saving, you were actually putting into an account that
Putting into
could
the
help the
account.
district, yeah.
I think that I like the belt and suspenders because I think that it truly is I think in any financial like example, when you think about saving for retirement or anything, any example, you're not, you know, building wealth. You talk about like you're not just supposed to have one source of income. We're not only depending on the tax levy and the operating budget. There are so many different mechanisms that we can use to fund different expenses. And I think that circuit breaker is one of them, and the stabilization fund is also another, but in very different circumstances, in different situations, with different timing. So,
I just wonder if even developing a scenario,
So I
like
think
not
if-
in a detailed way, but being able, like you sort of did, John, to speak to what happens if we recognize mid-year we need to have a 1-to-1 aid that we didn't you know, something like that.
Yeah, one of the things I was, so I appreciate Nick reaching out to us and letting us know this was happening for the last couple of days and also still being open to the conversation. So despite the fact that it was voted, it still could be some sort of a conversation. And then, and it's always nice to be able to go into town meeting with the warrant committee, the select board and the school committee on the same page with
Yeah, that's
all
the goal.
aspects of the budget.
That's the goal.
And if the worst scenario came that the money stayed in that account, maybe the next line of discussion is if we don't get it to be able to be put into our budget would be, let's be really explicit about what it would look like for the district to be able to access it.
Yes.
Like, you know, what's the definition? What I wrote down is, what would it look like? What's the circumstance that the school was facing
Right, exactly.
that would warrant an acceptable request for those funds to be accessed during the school year? And we'd have to read the law again because there is some language legally that we'd have to adhere to. But I think that would be a nice exercise for us to kind of talk a little bit about, because it might put us at ease that, geez, if everybody's willing to do it in a very simple way, then maybe that would work. If it feels like there's gonna be too much work involved, then maybe you wouldn't be able to meet that criterion, and the answer might be no, then obviously that money would be better off with us in order to address those needs.
For it to be less abstract, because I feel like
Yeah.
some of the people that are having strong views,
Don't have a concrete example yet.
oh, I'm not confident. Maybe they do have a firm grasp on it, but based on the discussions, like if we can make it concrete, not abstract, maybe that would help.
So we use that use that direction prior to the warrant committee meeting as we're looking at the presentation. We can move forward with that, recognizing where everybody stands and as far as the other pieces around the budget, are there any other changes that people are asking for that we want to discuss, or do we feel comfortable with? Go ahead, Nathan.
Well, I just wanted to comment on this discussion. I just haven't had a chance to weigh in yet. I think I feel, all right, I think I feel somewhat differently. I do agree that if the $500,000 in free cash were channeled to our reserve account, that would be, can't remember which comes first, the belt or I guess the belt comes first. Strengthen the belt first. I agree with that. I just have a couple of counter arguments that are rattling around in my head. One is that, like Katie, the scenario you described from your experience sounds like a town and a district that is further along in the maturity model than Milton Public Schools and the town of Milton are in terms of managing and talking about how these decisions and how reserves are dealt with. We're like navigating this without a map. We don't have a circuit breaker policy. I bet we don't have a sped stabilization account policy. And while it would be good to channel money to the belt, I'm
I feel like, I do feel like the example would bring it out of abstraction, but I still feel like we're still solidly in abstraction because we don't have the wraparound support that would help us make these decisions better. And so with that in mind, and I think like all of us have probably quadrupled our level of understanding around the use of reserve accounts over the past year. It's probably true for people on the select board, people on the warrant committee. And so I just don't want to let perfect be the enemy of progress. We're funding an account we need.
That's fair.
And Katie, I think what you're saying makes a ton of sense. I'm not sure it's gonna work out for us. And I don't know that having public boards debate each other on the floor of town meeting over $500,000 is a good idea. We should resolve
Yeah.
that and call it quits way
That's-
before.
Okay.
I know
They- no,
you're just
I-
riffing.
Well, I'm not, I agree with that, definitely agree with that, and there's time to continue trying. I just wanna make sure that everybody is making these very important decisions with access to all the information that can help us make the right decisions. That's
Totally.
That's
Yeah.
that's all, and
I agree with a lot of what Nathan's saying. I think I'd be more concerned about this decision from the select board if we hadn't done our work on our end to continue to have long-term ways in which we can continue to fund the circuit breaker account. And so that if the only way we were able to do that is through free cash allocated by the select board, I would have a lot of concerns and I think be willing to fight this battle a bit harder. I think to your point, we're talking about ideally, I would have liked them to listen to us and to do what we asked them to do. And I feel like we know better about what the school department needs than they do in terms of providing a stabilization. We talked about it a few times. They did not agree. They did not move forward. I don't think it's the end of the world. I think as I'm thinking about the things I'd like to push the select board on, it's really pointing me previously, which is like, how are we, changing that 3% target? Like, let's move to that. That's the thing that's really gonna drive impact to students. And so if y'all wanna put this in account that you have more oversight on, that's your purview. But I think your point, we need to develop policy around the stabilization fund. We have a lot of work we've been doing and wanna finish up around all these other revolving accounts. There's just a lot of other work I think we can do that hopefully then helps tell the story clearer in future fiscal years. If there's free cash next year, that maybe then we've created a policy and we've been able to kind of refine the story a bit so that they listen to us next year and say, okay, we'll give this to your circuit breaker. So I'm at this point, I just don't think I agree with you. I don't think it's a piece that needs to battle on. I don't know if anybody else has more thoughts on that, but I'd be happy to kind of address the rest of the budget. I know we're close to 9 o'clock, so appreciate all that. Just on the overall budget, I again come back to another point Nathan made, which is like the flexibility, and John, you talked about it with that remaining 100,000. And we did not at Finance Committee talk about the Title I change too, so that information is new tonight and very, very disappointing. Unfortunately not super surprising, but very disappointing. Even without that, I think my inclination was to leave the $100,000 to provide some discretion, some flexibility. Nurse is obviously something I brought up before, just like the additional floating nurse to provide capacity for that lead nurse. And just within the kind of those larger schools. But especially with the Title I funds loss, I think that's necessary. I'm concerned about, we obviously started this year with there's a list of positions that we didn't fill in order to provide us flexibility. Some of those positions are now gone next year. They will not be on the table for positions that will provide us flexibility. Circuit breaker utilization is increasing, so that flexibility is shrinking. We have a cut budget next year, so we are like already tightening things further. So our flexibility is shrinking next year, and to do that, even putting more pressure on that budget from our lens for positions that y'all are telling us you feel like you can operate without, and based on my own experiences I've shared before, but also from research, like 30 communities across the state it is not an uncommon model at all as it relates to kind of the nurse position, to have it be a lead nurse versus a director. So I think as others have said, I'm comfortable with where we are. We also, I think it's a little bit more than 110 because of some of the fee stuff we talked about, which we'll share on. So if I would push more on the, obviously I agree with you, keeping funding whatever kind of positions we have at Tucker that are being lost due to the title, or the funding's being lost due to Title I. And then also, what can we do to just make sure that ELA rollout is a success? What do y'all need? Like, that has to be, continue to be a priority. We can't just say, we checked that off, we're done, we're good. Like, there's a lot of work next year to make that successful. So if there's more stuff there, would love to hear. Otherwise, very comfortable with where we're at.
I think it impacts a lot of students, right? I think that's a thing too, right? Like whatever support, because it impacts so many kids in the elementary schools. So
In the community, it was very, very clear that it was a high priority.
and I think that's
And the community responded to that.
And I think that's part of the flexibility that we talk about building, right? Like it shouldn't get to that point, right? Where they're demanding that we need it, right? Like we should be able to have the flexibility to continue to look at this stuff and just make those decisions so that we're not at the point where they're like, hey, you guys have to update this. Like this has gone on long enough. Like we shouldn't, so I think that's where like my concerns with like, every little bit helps. Right, and next year, if we're in this position and there are positions on the table, again, we're gonna be in a similar situation where, community members are gonna be advocating for positions that are really important to them or directly impact them, but I think, not having, like, how do we build that flexibility as quick as possible, I think is important, I think, so that, cause it's just tough going through this process every year and, like, looking at every position and saying, no, we really need this, or no, we can't, and so on and so forth, so.
I'm glad that we paused and had this conversation. I think it was really important to do so the public could understand where people landed on everything, so thank you very much, appreciate it.
Thank you, John, for directing that. The community school fee increase discussion and potential votes. So again, that memo was in the materials. PDF's copy of kind of a presentation, short presentation deck that Martha made to us with kind of, you can see what the current fees are on that second slide, what the proposed fees are, and then Martha did a great job of providing a lot of comparative data. She does that every time she kind of shares information on us, obviously did for the summer program as well, of just kind of where does that put us. And I think based upon that information, as well as the information on kind of the second to last page, which really shows kind of the statements essentially, where even with this additional revenue, we're still going to be shrinking our reserves within that account. It's going to dropped down to around $100,000 mark, even with that. And so that's kind of that flexibility of that's an estimate. We need some flexibility. We can't have that be zero, and in all likelihood, we need to. In all likelihood, we are expecting that we will need to increase fees again for FY28, the following fiscal year. So this is kind of a slow, but a rollout over a couple of years to right size those fees to make sure that the program is going to be able to operate at a sustainable level. Because if it continues on this trajectory, then the cost of operating this program will have a negative impact on the school department operating budget elsewhere. That's some offsets elsewhere, and that's not what this program is envisioned to do. So we need to try and right size it, but I appreciate that. I think we talked about in the meeting, appreciate the department trying to work to do that over time and not within 1 year, because although the fees next year are still very competitive and kind of even on the lower end of those comparison districts, it is a not insignificant increase for families. And so that's something we took lightly. So the committee, the finance committee did recommend that the school committee approve these fee increases for next year. But I'll pause there in case there's other comments.
Is there any concern about the ability to continue providing the tuition assistance as it's included in the recommendation to continue doing that, but given that the fees are going up rather, much more substantially than they have in previous years, will that be able to just sort of be guaranteed? Or how is that sort of projected?
So I think Martha stated that in the sign-up fees that we have that are different from tuition that were increased, is that's the pool of money from which she draws the support for families who may not have the means to pay the full tuition. So there is, and those sign-up fees were increased.
Yes. So previously, it's the registration fee. It's under the other fees associated category. And it's currently $25 a family. And for next year, it'll be $25 a child. And that is a part of the funding mechanism to be able to help the families that apply for that tuition assistance.
Okay, thanks.
Questions folks have about this? If there are no questions, then I will make a motion to approve 27 fee increases for community schools as presented. Any final discussion? If not, we'll do a vote. All in favor? And again, there's materials on the other fee increases which were discussed today. Katie, I actually didn't open them because we just talked about them. Does that memo doesn't reflect the updated proposal we discussed?
Correct.
Yeah, it's the
That was
memo
the
we
original.
reviewed. So we talked about a couple revisions. And so I think the goal would be maybe we can, if possible, Katie, to update that memo, just provide a highlight that says kind of where the committee landed on the final fee suggestions, proposals that we voted to recommend to the school committee. And we'll do that on Monday. That's it for finance. Yeah, I'll do the vendor warrants. I just want to make sure those up also. Okay. Vendor warrants, I want to make a note that I have signed and approved the following vendor warrants. Vendor warrant 34 in the amount of $376,112.28. 35 in the amount of $48,119.93. And vendor warrant 36, which is broken into two warrants because there were two different people working on them. We finally hired a wonderful new staff member coming over from the town to help us out in that department and take over for the sorting the scale. Vendor warrant 36, the amount of $545,167.38. $58,097.89. I believe I've already sent to committee members 34, 35, 2 for 36. Have not sent. I just didn't get the PDF yet, so we'll read that today, and so we'll send that over once I get it.
Facilities Advisory Committee.
Okay, so I'll keep this quick. I know we're getting late. So yesterday our facilities advisory committee met. We had the members from the Tucker Playground Project come as special guests to our meeting, which we're really excited about. They've done quite a bit of work so far. They have basically surveyed teachers, families, neighbors, and had community meetings to get input in terms of feedback on the space that they have outside of Tucker. They have received some funds from CPC that needs to be voted on. They to hire an architect, and they've also have been seeking input from fire and police to make sure that the plans are kind of appropriate in terms of safety. Tom McCarthy, our facilities director, has also been very involved in that. I know some of you guys, we did like the walk around Tucker with our facilities committee a couple of years ago, and you need access to the dumpster that's behind the building, so keeping that space open. And so just like parking, I know with the snowstorms, like they were really good about removing the snow so that they had access to parking with all of that, because it's very tight spaces, so just making sure those things are all accessible during construction. They, as all projects, the cost that they estimated initially has gone up a bit, so it's around $850 right now. So they're looking at ways to raise funds. Please donate if you can, because I think they're looking to raise as much as they can, and a lot of design opportunities there to really create a space that's wonderful for the students and also for the community. They have another $100,000 that this earmarked from the state, and then I know they've been working with Senator Driscoll and Representative Wells and so on and so forth, and including Ayanna Presley. The town has co-authored a grant that they applied for $450,000. They have started fundraising locally. I think they sent out a postcard a few months ago, and they're hoping to do like events, week-long events, to kind of get the community excited about it. So it was really nice to talk to them. They came in primarily to see if we had any suggestions in terms of like safety issues. I think, but we're kind of having Tom kind of help them through that and just be in communication with them in terms of what they need to make sure that things are done appropriately and whatever access in terms of safety with fire and police. The timeline is to break ground in June of 2027 and have it constructed during July and August. So they're hoping it's a quick runway. Tom, based on his experience at Cunningham Collycott, their fourth floor project, said the timeline, they were able to adhere to that timeline. So they're hoping that this playground project will be the same. So, and then that was the first half of the meeting. And we offered to help however we can if they had questions, and they're welcome to come to our meetings. And obviously I invited them to come to school committee too whenever they had more information to share. So then from Tom, our update was the custodial staff and the consolidated facilities all did a really good job to get the schools open as quickly as possible after the snowstorms. And then over February break, his staff cleaned the vents and the legs in the MHS auditorium. They're nice and bright now, so you'll see it at town meeting. It's really different, and when he sends before pictures, I will share both of them because they do look really nice. And then phase 2 of the Cunningham Collycott project will begin late June. They're hoping to get some tile removal work done over April break. So that they are still on target to getting that work done over the summer. So he has been doing walkthroughs with a company focused on the building energy needs, looking at our rooftop units and so on and so forth, because they are coming to the end of their lifespan. They've been on maintenance plans, so they're still working. But I think that's some of the, so he's trying to create a maintenance list to kind of maintain our facilities and kind of prioritizing, I think, just like anything else, they were not able to fund a lot of things at Capitol, so including that light that they need out on Brooksfield once again. So I know, so they're just trying to create a priority list. Hey, we have to do this before it gets where we can't no longer, and it ends up being a bigger cost or something like that. So that was basically that meeting. So yeah, and then I will share any updates for
can I add something? Because at the MFE board meeting, we also talk about the Tucker playground, and the MFE is thinking to like see if they can support that project
that's great.
in a way. So I think more detail will be coming, but the MFE also talk about they're also doing a fundraiser for the Teacher of the Year
Yep.
celebration, and they're looking for nominations from students and families for the Teacher of the Year. So the more that we can collect donations from different revenues, they will be more willing to support different initiatives like the playground.
Yeah, no, that's great, and I think also the, you know, they're trying to outreach, do outreach with Tucker alumni to help get involved and support that, so hopefully they'll reach their fundraising goal by the time, you know, they can get started on time, so. That was it for facilities, and then I can go into policy, which we also met right before facilities yesterday. John mentioned that the district is looking into reviewing our policy ECAF, which is their security cameras policy. And he has started initial discussions with the police chief on whether it makes sense to give remote access to the Milton Police Department during emergencies to our internal cameras. They currently have access to the external cameras, but currently they do not have access to internal interior cameras. So if they need to review footage, they have to come into the building and look through, review the footage on site. So, you know, I know there are concerns about police presence and trust and so on and so forth, and just, so I think the goal here, from the way John explained it, is to really foster a healthy partnership between the district and Milton Police. And so we're just kind of trying to figure out, does it make sense to give them access in case of emergency, where they can access the interior footage so they have a better understanding of what is happening in case of emergency within a building before they come in, so they're better prepared versus after the fact. And then who gives access? Does the police chief have access, or does our IT department provide access for a temporary amount of time? So we talked about things like, is there like a lag time between who has access? You know, does having the police chief having access help them get the information faster, or so on and so forth? So he's gonna continue having those discussions and looking at what other districts are doing, and just kind of getting more language around that, and it's gonna come back to policy. But that policy voted to or was in favor of looking at that policy in detail, so that should be coming down in the next couple of months. So yeah, that was really it.
And a quick question on that, just to make sure I understand. It seems like in a situation where there's an intruder or an active shooter, you would want the police to have real-time access to cameras. Is that currently, are we saying that's currently not the case?
That's correct.
Not inside.
This is something that the Milton Police have asked for a period of time, I think. And to Anna's point, the Milton Police are incredibly helpful partners. They train all of our principals, all of our staff in lockdowns and stay in places, along with the fire department, at least twice a year, maybe 3 times a year in some cases. We have an agreement with them where we have our school resource officers in our schools, not just at the high school, but they go to all the schools. And they have been seeking this permission as part of their training. They do a lot of outside training across the state. They actually used the Pierce over the summer last year for some area training. So they could be in a school building with other police departments. They have cross training that goes on, and most of those places have access to the cameras. So all it would look like would be that they wouldn't look at it all day. There would be a switch that had to be turned on by somebody, whether it's on the school side or the chief. And then in their headquarters, they could actually see and direct the police officer to the area with a approach. And it would only be in the case of a critical incident, a fire, or a intruder.
cameras are in the hallways, not in the
Correct.
classrooms.
They're not in classrooms, they're not in bathrooms, they're in the general areas, and they're on all day. They're already on. This would just give them a chance in the example that if there's an active shooter and no one knows where it is, but the cameras are on and then they can see it, so when they're coming, they can direct their officers to go right to the field house where it is. And they can direct other things before they even get on site, which would be really helpful. And then to monitor that and direct police, because they could see whatever was happening live. So we think in those cases, there's better to have as many tools as you can for those officers and the staff and the students.
School building committee report.
Take it? Sure. Yeah. I think you weren't at the last one. We had kind of two back-to-back meetings, both related. We're sort of at the phase where we need to prepare, we're preparing ourselves to acquire an owner's project manager who will take us through several steps of this project and represent us in dealing with subs on the project, designers, construction, et cetera. So there is a process for making that happen. We have to submit a request for proposals that is designed by MSBA. So the committee went through that and made some changes that we were allowed to make. We also formed a subcommittee that's going to review proposals. So voted on that. And as I understand it, Mark, trying to know if I'm missing anything here, we need to okay. Actually, Mark, explain the process that gets us to September or whatever it is in front of the board, because I can't remember what comes first.
Yeah, so we voted on the RFQ, very few things we can change to it, it's pretty standard. MSBA has to sign off on that and tell us it's good to go, then we publicly post it, following all public procurement processes. Then we get the qualification sheets, essentially the offers from OPMs, that's reviewed by the subcommittee. The idea is to get that down to a short list of kind of 3 finalists. Those 3 finalists will come in for in-person interviews, that will submit RFPs or proposals. They'll come in for in-person interviews. We'll do reference checks. Committee will select one that they like. That's going to be the full school building committee, and then we will share that recommendation with the MSBA. MSBA has to sign off on that too at a board meeting, and that's really something that's kind of driving this process. And I appreciate Nick Milano really was helping to drive this, make sure we got it in. That's why we met twice since the last meeting. Because the sooner we can get the RFQ over to MSBA for approval, the sooner we can be on their kind of meeting agenda for an upcoming meeting, which the soonest they had available was July. So it was either gonna be July, August, or September for kind of the meeting dates. And so we're trying to get in that July meeting frame by getting this over to them as soon as possible, because it's first come, first serve. And they only take 2 people every month. So anyway, so we're not 100% sure where that timeline lands for us. We'll find out here soon. And that will drive kind of the rest of the timeline for those steps we have to follow.
Excellent. The minutes were in the folder. You had a chance to review them.
A motion to approve the school committee minutes for February 25th, 2026.
Second.
Are approved. So the next, I'm actually gonna move to upcoming meetings. So the next meeting agenda, which would be for March 16th, would be voting on the fees and then voting on the budget, and that will be a virtual meeting. Following meeting, which will be March 25th, we have subcommittee reports. I added MFE because we didn't have that on this agenda, and I know that you met.
I actually won't be here starting this Saturday.
Okay. So you're not here for the 25th? For the 25th meeting, not
Oh,
the.
25th I will be here.
Yeah, so MFE, yeah, the other.
Yeah.
We have negotiations update, capital improvement, planning committee. We have Dr. Fish coming to talk about analyzing and building systems to support students transition to high school, and we have a DEIB update. Is there anything else?
We had a placeholder of just FY 27 budget, just in case there's anything we need to discuss as well.
I don't know what's typical for the school committee here, but I'm interested in getting an update on hiring for the poor soul who has to fill Katie's shoes next year, and I don't know when and how that happens. So just wanted to put that on the radar. And if it's not, I'm not saying it has to be March 25th, but just.
It can be March 25th. We have an update where Carla is leading the internal team to the search committee has been appointed. The folks have been assigned. Carla will meet with them on Monday to go through the search process, the characteristics, the DEIB training that we want every screening team to have as part of this process, and then they'll do a paper review of the candidates, and they'll be interviewing folks on Thursday and Friday of next week.
Anything else? Okay, great. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Thank you.